My son was pouring champagne and raising a toast to my long life while his wife was texting the nursing home to come pick us up that very night. I stood there smiling at the guests, completely unaware that the house I built with my own hands had been sold out from under me an hour ago. My wife Beatrice grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. She didn't look at the crowd. She looked at the iPad connected to the speaker system. "Run," she whispered. "We have to run right now." I thought she was having a stroke until I looked at the screen. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. Before I tell you how my own flesh and blood tried to throw me away like yesterday's trash, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. I am Cyrus. I am 70 years old. I have lived in Atlanta my entire life. I am a man who believes in concrete, steel, and foundations. For 40 years, I worked as a structural engineer, building bridges that thousands of people drive over every day without fear. I know how to spot a crack in the pavement before it becomes a sinkhole. I know how to calculate the load a beam can hold before it snaps. But as I stood in my own backyard, surrounded by balloons and expensive catering, I realized I had missed the biggest structural failure of my life. My son. It was supposed to be a celebration. My 69th birthday. My son Terrence and his wife Paige had insisted on hosting it at our house. They said they wanted to honor me. They said I deserved a night off. I looked around the yard. It was decorated with white linens and fresh flowers. There was a jazz band playing in the corner. A very expensive jazz band. I knew what jazz bands cost in this city. I looked at Terrence. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. He was laughing with his friends, holding a glass of crystal clear liquor. Something did not add up. Terrence was a mid-level manager at a logistics firm. He made decent money, but he did not make this kind of money. Not the kind of money that buys imported orchids and hires a 5-piece brass band for a backyard barbecue. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. It was the instinct I had developed over decades on construction sites. The feeling that the ground was not stable. I looked for my wife Beatrice. She was in the kitchen organizing the trays of food. Beatrice was the smartest woman I ever knew. She could stretch a dollar until it screamed. We had retired comfortably because of her discipline and my hard work. We lived well, but we lived quietly. We did not flash our money. We did not buy things we did not need. Terrence tapped a spoon against his glass. The sharp sound cut through the humid Atlanta air. The music stopped. The guests turned toward the patio steps where my son stood. He looked the part of the devoted son. He had my nose, my height, but he did not have my hands. His hands were soft. Friends and family, Terrence boomed, his voice smooth like oil. We are here to celebrate a titan, a man who built not just bridges but a legacy. My father, Cyrus. Everyone clapped. I forced a smile. It felt tight on my face. I saw Paige standing near the back door. She was my daughter-in-law. She was a woman who always looked at things as if she were appraising them for an auction. She was not clapping. She was whispering to a man I did not recognize. He was short, sweating in a cheap polyester suit and clutching a leather briefcase to his chest like a shield. Why was there a man with a briefcase at my birthday party? Terrence continued his speech. He talked about sacrifice. He talked about family values. It was a good performance. But I noticed his eyes. They were not looking at me. They were darting to his wrist. He checked his watch once, then twice. He was rushing. Why was he rushing? This was a party. We had nowhere to go. I stepped away from the crowd, moving toward the kitchen to get a glass of water. The heat was getting to me, or maybe it was the uneasiness settling in my gut. I walked through the sliding glass doors. The kitchen was cooler. The air conditioning was humming. Beatrice was standing by the center island. She was staring at the iPad we used to control the music playlist. The device was connected to the outdoor speakers via Bluetooth. Beatrice, I said. That band. Did Terrence tell you how much they cost? Beatrice did not answer. She did not move. Her back was rigid. Her shoulders were tense. I walked closer. Beatrice. She turned around slowly. Her face was gray. I had been married to this woman for 45 years. I had seen her through childbirth, through the death of her parents, through sickness and health. I had never seen her look like this. She looked terrified. She grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the island. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Look, she whispered. Her voice was trembling. I looked down at the iPad. Paige had synced her phone to the system to play her playlist, but she had forgotten to turn off the message synchronization. A text message banner was floating at the top of the screen overlaying the music controls. It was from a contact named Agent Miller. The message read, "The buyers are impatient. I have the cash deposit. We need signatures by 8:00 a.m. tomorrow. Is the house empty yet?" I blinked. I read it again. Buyer's signatures, house empty. Then another message popped up below it. This one was from the contact named Sunset Creek Director. Bed 402 and 403 in the indigent ward are reserved. Van will arrive at 9:00 p.m. to collect the patients. Make sure they are sedated if they are combative. The world tilted. The floor of my kitchen, the Italian tile I had laid myself 20 years ago, seemed to dissolve. Sunset Creek. I knew that place. It was a state-funded facility on the outskirts of the county. It was a place where people went to be forgotten. A warehouse for the dying who had no money and no family. Indigent ward, sedated, combative. They were talking about us. I looked at Beatrice. She swiped the screen, revealing the conversation history. It wasn't just a sudden decision. It was weeks of planning. I saw a message from Terrence to Paige sent 3 days ago. "Don't worry, babe. The old man trusts me. I have access to the accounts to pay the caterers. Once they are inside Sunset Creek, we declare them incompetent. The house sale covers your debts and gets us the penthouse." My knees almost gave out. I had to lean against the counter. My son. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The boy I put through college. He was not just selling my house. He was erasing me. He was locking me away in a hellhole so he could pay off his wife's debts. I felt a roar building in my throat, a rage so pure and hot it felt like lava. I turned toward the patio doors. I was going to go out there. I was going to wrap my hands around his neck. I was going to show him what a structural engineer does when a support beam is rotten. "You tear it out." "Cyrus, no," Beatrice hissed. She stepped in front of me, blocking my path. She placed both hands on my chest. "Move, Beatrice," I growled. "I am going to kill him." "No," she said firmly. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steel. "Look at the yard, Cyrus. Look at them." I looked past her shoulder. Through the glass, I saw Terrence laughing. I saw the man with the briefcase checking his watch. I saw 2 large men in dark uniforms standing near the back gate. They looked like private security or orderlies. "They are waiting for us to make a scene," Beatrice whispered. "If you go out there screaming, if you get violent, you prove them right. You prove you are unstable. You prove you are dangerous. They will have you sedated and strapped to a gurney before the cake is cut. And then we lose. We lose everything." She was right. I took a ragged breath. The rage was still there, but it cooled into something harder, something sharper. "What do we do?" I asked. Beatrice reached into her purse on the counter. She pulled out the spare key to my old Ford pickup truck. It was a 1990 model, beat up and rusted, parked around the block because Paige said it was an eyesore that would ruin the aesthetic of the party. "Take the keys," she said. "We are leaving. Right now." "We can't just leave," I said. "My wallet, my medication, our clothes. We leave it all," Beatrice said. "We act like nothing is wrong. We walk out the side door like we are checking the circuit breaker. And we run." I looked at the iPad one last time. A new message from Paige to Terrence appeared. "Only 30 minutes left. Get them inside for the cake cutting. The van is 2 blocks away." 30 minutes. That was the timeline of my life. 30 minutes before I ceased to be Cyrus, the respected engineer, and became patient 402, the indigent old man with dementia. I looked at my wife. I saw the fear in her eyes, but I also saw the woman who had stood by me for half a century. She was not ready to be a victim. And neither was I. "Let's go," I said. I grabbed the keys. I took the iPad. "Why are you taking that?" Beatrice asked. "Evidence," I said. We moved toward the side door of the kitchen that led to the garage alley. I moved as quietly as I could, my heavy dress shoes silent on the tile. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Every laugh from the yard sounded like a threat. Every note from the jazz band sounded like a funeral dirge. We stepped out into the cool evening air. The alley was dark. The party noise was muffled here. We walked fast. I did not hold Beatrice's arm to support her. I held it to keep us connected, to make sure she was real, to make sure this nightmare was actually happening. We reached the corner where I had parked the truck. It was covered in a layer of pollen. It looked ugly. It looked beautiful. It looked like freedom. I unlocked the passenger door for Beatrice. She climbed in, hiking up her Sunday dress. I ran around to the driver's side. I jammed the key into the ignition. "Please start," I prayed. "Please start." The engine cranked. It wheezed. It sputtered. And then it roared to life with a loud, smoky cough. It was loud. Too loud. In the rearview mirror, I saw movement at the house. The back gate opened. Terrence stepped out into the alley. He was holding a slice of cake. He looked confused. He looked toward the sound of the truck. He saw us. Our eyes locked across the distance of the alley and the 30 years of love I had wasted on him. His confusion turned to panic. He dropped the cake. He started to run toward us. "Dad?" he shouted. "Dad, wait, where are you going?" He waved his arm. The two large men in uniforms appeared behind him. They started running too. I shifted the truck into drive. The tires screeched against the asphalt. I did not look back. I pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The old truck lurched forward, leaving a cloud of exhaust in our wake. I saw Terrence in the side mirror running his mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear. He pulled out his phone. He was making a call. "He isn't calling to say sorry," Beatrice said, staring straight ahead. "He is calling the police." I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned gray. I drove faster than I should have in a residential zone. I turned onto the main avenue, weaving through the traffic. "We are not going back, Beatrice," I said. "Not tonight. Not ever." "Where are we going?" she asked. Her voice was small now. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the crushing reality of our situation. We were two old people in a rusted truck with no clothes, no medicine, and a son who was hunting us. "I don't know," I said. "But I know one thing. What I am going to make him pay. I am going to make him wish he had never been born." My phone, which was sitting in the cup holder, lit up. It was Terrence. I ignored it. Then a text came through. "Dad, stop the car. You are not well. You are having an episode. The police are looking for the truck. Pull over before you hurt someone." I handed the phone to Beatrice. "Read it," I said. She read it out loud. Then she looked at me. "He reported the truck stolen, didn't he?" "He reported us stolen," I said. "He told them we are crazy. He told them we are a danger. Then we have to disappear," she said. I looked at the fuel gauge. We had half a tank. I looked at my wallet. I had $40 in cash. I looked at the iPad on Beatrice's lap. It was our only weapon. We drove onto the highway, merging into the stream of red taillights leaving the city. I was Cyrus. I was a builder. I knew how things were constructed, and I knew how to tear them down. My son wanted a war. He wanted to bury us. He was about to find out that you should never try to bury a man who knows how to dig. But first we had to survive the night. And as blue lights flashed in the distance behind us, I realized the night was just beginning. The interstate highway stretched out before us like a black ribbon cutting through the night. The dashboard of my 1990 Ford pickup truck rattled and shook, a symphony of loose bolts and old suspension that I had tuned out years ago. But tonight, every vibration felt like a warning. I gripped the steering wheel at 10 and 2, my knuckles aching, my eyes darting between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. Beside me, Beatrice sat rigid. Her Sunday dress was bunched up around her knees, her hands clutching that iPad like it was the Holy Grail. We were fugitives in our own city, running from a crime we did not commit, chased by the son we had raised. The silence in the cab was shattered by a sound that made us both jump. My cell phone. It was sitting in the cup holder, vibrating against the hard plastic with the violence of a jackhammer. The screen lit up, illuminating the dark cab with a harsh artificial glow. It was Terrence. Again. I did not answer. I kept my eyes on the road, merging into the center lane of I-85, trying to blend in with the semi-trucks and late-night travelers. The phone stopped. Then it started again. Then it chimed with a text message. Beatrice looked down at it. "Read it," I said. My voice sounded like gravel grinding together. She hesitated. "Read it." "Beatrice, I need to know what he is planning." She lifted the phone. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. She read, "Dad, stop the car. The police have been notified. I told them you are confused. I told them you took the keys without asking. They know the truck is stolen. Pull over now before you hurt Mom." I slammed my hand against the steering wheel. Stolen. He had reported his own father for grand theft auto. He was painting a narrative in real time. I was not Cyrus, the retired engineer. I was Cyrus, the dementia patient who had snapped. He was weaponizing the police against me. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew what happens when police see an old black man in a beat-up truck that has been reported stolen. He was banking on it. I checked the speedometer. I was doing 65. The speed limit was 70. I could not go faster. This engine was tired. It had 300,000 miles on it. It was built for hauling lumber, not for high-speed chases. Then I saw it. In the distance behind us, a blue light pierced the darkness. It was faint at first, just a rhythmic pulse reflecting off the highway signs. Then came the red, blue, red, blue, red. It was closing in fast. Beatrice turned in her seat. "Cyrus," she said. "I know," I said. "Is it them I do not know? Maybe they are passing us." I moved to the right lane. I slowed down. I held my breath. The lights got brighter. The siren wailed a high-pitched scream that drowned out the rattle of the engine. The cruiser flew up behind us, riding my bumper. Then a second cruiser appeared next to it. They were not passing. They were swarming. The lead car hit its loudspeaker. The voice was distorted and loud. "Driver of the Ford pickup, pull over immediately, pull over to the shoulder." My heart hammered against my ribs. I had not felt this specific kind of fear in 50 years. It is a fear that lives in the marrow of every black man in this country, dormant but never dead. I flashed back to 1974. I was 20 years old, driving home from a late shift at the shipyard. I had been pulled over for a broken taillight. I ended up face down on the pavement with a boot on my neck because I had reached for my wallet too quickly. I remembered the grit of the asphalt against my cheek. I remembered the cold click of the handcuffs. I looked at my hands now. They were older. They were wrinkled. But to the officers behind me, I was just a suspect in a stolen vehicle, a danger. "I am pulling over," I told Beatrice. "Keep your hands where they can see them. Do not reach for anything. Do not reach for the iPad." I guided the truck onto the gravel shoulder. The tires crunched and popped. I put it in park. I turned off the engine. I rolled down my window. I placed both hands on the top of the steering wheel, fingers spread wide. The cruisers stopped behind us. Their spotlights hit the mirrors, blinding me. I squinted against the glare. I heard car doors open. I heard the distinct sound of safety latches being clicked off on holsters. "Driver," a voice shouted, "step out of the vehicle. Slowly. Walk backwards toward the sound of my voice." I took a deep breath. I looked at Beatrice. She was terrified. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the flashing lights. "It is going to be okay." I lied. I opened the door. The latch creaked. I stepped out onto the asphalt. The night air was thick with exhaust fumes and tension. I held my hands up, palms open. I did not turn around. "Walk backwards," the officer commanded. I took a step back, then another. My knees ached. My back was stiff. I felt the heat of the spotlight on my neck. "Stop," the voice said. "Get on your knees, hands behind your head." I paused. "I am 70 years old," I said. My voice was calm, projecting over the highway noise. "I have bad knees. If I get down, I cannot get back up easily." "Do it now," the officer shouted. I started to lower myself. The humiliation burned hotter than the spotlight. This was my son's gift to me. This was his birthday present. He had stripped me of my dignity on the side of Interstate 85. Suddenly, a scream came from the truck cab. It was a high, piercing wail of agony. "Cyrus." My chest. "Oh, God." My chest. I froze. It was Beatrice. The officers hesitated. I could hear the shift in their movement. "My wife," I yelled, turning my head slightly. "She has a heart condition. She is having an attack." "Stay where you are," the officer yelled, but his voice lacked the earlier aggression. "Please," I shouted. "She needs her medication. It is in the glove box." "She is dying." Another scream from the truck. This one sounded like it was being torn from her throat. Beatrice was selling it. She was selling it for our lives. The officer approached me rapidly. He was young white with a high and tight haircut. He grabbed my arm, but he did not throw me to the ground. He spun me around and pushed me against the bed of the truck. He patted me down quickly. "No weapons. Check on her," I pleaded. The second officer ran to the passenger side. I heard him opening the door. Ma'am, can you hear me?" My chest. Beatrice gasped. "I can't breathe." The first officer looked at me. He looked at my face. He saw the gray in my beard. He saw the terror in my eyes. The narrative Terrence had painted began to crack. I did not look like a dangerous car thief. I looked like a terrified husband. "Is this your truck?" the officer asked. "Yes," I said. "My name is Cyrus. My wallet is in my back pocket. My ID is in there. The registration is in the glove box. Please help my wife." He reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. He checked the license. He radioed it in. "Dispatch. I have a Cyrus King here, checking registration on the Ford." There was a pause. The static of the radio filled the air. Dispatch to Unit 4. Vehicle is registered to Cyrus King. No warrants. The officer lowered his radio. He looked at the truck. He looked at me. The tension in his shoulders dropped an inch. Sir, we have a report that this vehicle was stolen by a confused elderly male. The report was filed by a Terrence King. That is my son, I said. I looked him dead in the eye. My son is angry because we had a disagreement. I am not confused. I am not stealing my own truck. And right now my wife is having a medical emergency because you pulled us over with guns drawn. The officer looked toward the cab. His partner was helping Beatrice sit up. She is breathing, the partner called out. Pulse is racing, but she is conscious. She says she just needs water and her pills. The first officer released my arm. He stepped back. He holstered his weapon. Mr. King, he said, you have to understand. When we get a call about a stolen vehicle and a mental health crisis, we have to be careful. Your son sounded very distressed. He said you were a danger to yourself. My son, I said, straightening my jacket, is a liar. I walked past him to the cab. Beatrice was leaning back against the seat, clutching her chest. She looked at me. Her eyes were sharp. She gave me the tiniest wink. It was imperceptible to the officer, but clear as day to me. I grabbed a bottle of water from behind the seat and pretended to hand her a pill. She drank. She took deep, ragged breaths. Are we going to need an ambulance? The officer asked. No, I said. We just need to go. We are going to stay with friends tonight. We are fine. The officer looked at his notepad. Look, Mr. King, the car is yours. You check out, but your son is blowing up the station's phone lines. He says you are off your medication. He is terrified something is going to happen to you. Tell him I said, my voice cold and hard, that the only thing he needs to worry about is what happens when I see him again. The officer sighed. He handed me back my wallet. Drive safe, Mr. King, and call your son. He loves you. He is just worried. He loves me. The words tasted like bile. I nodded. I did not trust myself to speak. I climbed into the driver's seat. My hands were shaking not from fear anymore, but from the adrenaline crash. I started the engine. The officers walked back to their cruisers. I waited until they turned off their flashing lights before I pulled back onto the highway. We drove in silence for 5 miles. The darkness of the road swallowed us. You okay? I asked Beatrice. I should win an Academy Award, she said. Her voice was steady, but she was gripping the door handle tight. You saved us, I said. They were going to hurt you, Cyrus, she said softly. I saw it in their eyes. They were ready to hurt you. I could not let that happen. I reached over and squeezed her hand. We were alive. We were free. But we were being hunted. The phone rang again. It was Terrence. I looked at the screen. The name flashed mockingly. He was tracking us. He knew we hadn't been arrested. He knew we were still moving. As long as I had that phone, he was in the passenger seat with us. He is tracking the GPS, I said. I know, Beatrice said. I rolled down the driver's side window. The wind roared into the cabin, loud and violent. It whipped my collar against my neck. I grabbed the phone. It felt heavy like a brick of lead. It contained photos of my grandchildren. It contained messages from old friends. It contained the digital footprint of my life. But right now, it was a shackle. I held it out the window. I felt the wind grab it. Goodbye, Terrence, I whispered. I let go. I watched in the side mirror as the phone tumbled onto the asphalt, bouncing once, twice, before shattering into 1,000 pieces under the wheels of an 18-wheeler behind us. I rolled the window up. The silence returned. Where are we going? Beatrice asked. We have no money in our pockets. We have no phone. We can't go to a hotel. They will track the credit cards. I thought about the cash I had stashed in the toolbox in the bed of the truck. Emergency money, maybe $40. Enough for gas, not enough for a room. We are going to find a place to sleep, I said. And then we are going to find Otis. Otis, she asked. He is the only one who knows how to fight dirty, I said. And if Terrence wants a war, we need a soldier. I looked at the fuel gauge. We had enough to get to the county line. We were ghosts now. No signal, no trace. Just 2 old people in a truck driving into the unknown, leaving the wreckage of our past life in the rearview mirror. The neon sign of the motel flickered with a dying buzz that sounded like a trapped insect. The Blue Moon Motor Inn. It sat on the edge of the county line, a place where the highway bled into the darkness of the pine woods. It was the kind of place you only stopped at if you had nowhere else to go or if you were hiding. We were doing both. I pulled the truck into the shadows away from the front office lights. The engine shuddered and died when I turned the key. The silence that rushed in was heavy. It was broken only by Beatrice's breathing. It was shallow. Too fast. I looked over at her. In the dim light of the dashboard, her skin looked gray. She was clutching her chest. Her hand balled into a fist over her heart. "My medication," she whispered. Her voice was thin like paper. I left it on the nightstand, next to the jewelry box. I felt a cold stone drop in my stomach. Her blood pressure pills. She had taken her morning dose, but with the stress of the escape, her heart was working overtime. She needed to calm down. She needed rest. She needed a bed that wasn't the bench seat of a 30-year-old truck. "Stay here," I said. "I am going to get us a room. I will get you water. You just breathe." I opened the door. The night air was humid and smelled of gasoline and damp earth. I walked toward the lobby. My legs felt stiff. I was 70 years old and I had been running on adrenaline for 3 hours. Now the adrenaline was gone, leaving only an ache in my bones and a fire in my mind. I walked into the lobby. It smelled of stale cigarettes and floor cleaner. The clerk was behind a sheet of bulletproof glass. He was a young man with headphones around his neck and eyes that said he had seen everything and cared about none of it. "Room for 2, I said. "One night." He didn't look up from his magazine. $65, plus a $20 deposit for the key. I reached for my wallet. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. I had my debit card. I had my credit card. I had the joint account card that I used for household expenses. We were fine. We had money. We had worked 40 years to have money. I slid the debit card into the metal tray under the glass. The clerk took it. He swiped it through the machine. He waited. I waited. The machine beeped, a harsh rejecting sound. "Declined," he said flatly. I frowned. "Try it again. There is money in there. There is over $50,000 in there." He sighed, the exaggerated sigh of someone who deals with broke people all night long. He swiped it again. "Declined. Insufficient funds or frozen. Call your bank." Frozen. The word hit me like a physical blow. Terrence. I pulled out the credit card. "The Platinum Visa." "Try this one," I said. He swiped it. The machine thought for a second longer this time. Then the screen flashed red. "Stolen," the clerk said. He looked at me then. His eyes narrowed. "This card is listed as stolen. I have to keep it." "No," I said, my voice rising. "That is my card. My name is on it. Cyrus King. Look at the ID." "Policy," he said. He dropped the card into a slot under the counter. "You got cash or not?" I stood there staring at the bulletproof glass. I felt naked. I felt exposed. 6 months ago. I remembered the kitchen table, the sunlight streaming in. Terrence had come over with a stack of papers. "Dad," he had said, "your eyes are getting worse. You missed that utility bill last month. Let me help. Sign this power of attorney. Put my name on the accounts. I can handle the digital stuff. You and Mom just relax. You earned it." I had looked at him. I had seen my son. I had seen the boy I taught to fish. I had signed. I had handed him the keys to the vault because I thought he was the guard. I didn't know he was the thief. I stepped back from the counter. I turned around and walked out. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I knew what had happened. He had locked us out. He had reported the card stolen. He was tightening the noose. I saw an ATM in the corner of the parking lot bathed in a sickly green light. I ran to it. I had one card left, a backup card from a credit union I rarely used. It wasn't connected to the main accounts. Maybe he forgot about it. Maybe he didn't know. I jammed the card into the slot. I typed in my PIN. My fingers felt thick and clumsy. "Please wait." Processing. I held my breath. "Just give me $100. Just enough for a room and some food." The screen flickered. "Account access restricted. Contact account holder. Card retained." The machine whirred and sucked the card deeper into its mechanical gut. It didn't give it back. I slapped the plastic casing of the machine. I hit it hard enough to hurt my hand. He had found them all. He had been thorough. He hadn't just been planning this for a week. He had been planning this for months. He had mapped out every financial vein in my body, and he had severed them all. I reached into my back pocket. I pulled out my leather wallet. It was soft from years of use. I opened it. 2 20s, 3 1s, $43. That was it. That was the sum total of my life right now. $43. I looked at the motel office. $65 for a room. I didn't have it. I looked at the truck. Beatrice was watching me through the windshield. I could see the fear in her face, even from here. I walked to the vending machine next to the office. I bought 2 bottles of water. I bought a package of cheese crackers and a bag of peanuts. I walked to the truck. I opened the door and climbed in. The air inside was stale and hot. "Did you get a room?" Beatrice asked. She was shivering now despite the heat. It was a reaction to the shock. "No," I said. "They are full." She looked at me. She knew I was lying. Beatrice could spot a lie from a mile away. "The cards didn't work, did they?" she asked softly. "He shut them down," I said. "He froze everything." She closed her eyes. She leaned her head back against the seat. A tear leaked out and tracked through the powder on her cheek. "We are homeless, Cyrus," she whispered. I opened the water bottle. "Here," I said. "Drink this. Eat these crackers. It will help with the dizziness." She took the water. Her hands were shaking so bad she spilled some on her dress. I took the bottle back and held it to her lips. She drank. She ate a cracker. "We have to sleep here," I said. "In the truck." "It's okay," she said. "I am just cold." "Why am I so cold?" I took off my suit jacket. I wrapped it around her shoulders. I adjusted the air vents. I reclined her seat as far back as it would go. "I am sorry, Beatrice," I said. The words felt inadequate. They felt small. "I failed you. I let him do this." "You didn't know," she said. Her voice was getting sleepy. Her body was shutting down to protect itself. None of us knew. "He is a monster." She curled up under my jacket. I watched her for a long time. I watched the rise and fall of her chest. I listened to the rattle of her breath. She was a queen. She deserved a palace. She was sleeping in a truck stop parking lot because our son wanted a quick payday. I looked out the windshield at the dark woods. A fury began to rise in me. It wasn't the hot, explosive anger I had felt at the party. This was different. This was cold. This was structural. I looked at my hands. These hands had built foundations that held up skyscrapers. These hands had poured concrete that withstood hurricanes. And these hands had signed the papers that gave a predator permission to eat us alive. I clenched my fists. "He thinks he has won," I whispered to the darkness. "He thinks we are just 2 old people who will fade away. He thinks we will die in the cold." I looked at Beatrice shivering in her sleep. Every tremor in her body was an accusation. Every shiver was a debt that Terrence owed me. "I swear to you, Beatrice," I said softly, "he will pay for every single shiver. He will pay for every tear. He will pay for the dust on your dress." I needed a weapon. I didn't have money. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a home. But I had my mind. And I had friends. Real friends. Not the people who drank my champagne at the party. Otis Washington. We had served in Vietnam together. We had worked on the crew together. He was a retired private investigator now. He lived off the grid 2 towns over. He didn't trust banks. He didn't trust the government. And he certainly didn't trust smooth-talking young men in expensive suits. He had a landline. I knew the number by heart. It was the only number I remembered besides my own. I looked at the gas gauge. We had enough fuel to get there if I drove carefully, but I couldn't just show up. I needed to call him. I needed to know he was there. I looked across the parking lot. There in the shadow of the main building was a payphone. A relic. A dinosaur. Just like me. I grabbed the last few quarters from the ashtray. I opened the truck door quietly so I wouldn't wake Beatrice. I walked across the cracked pavement. I picked up the receiver. It was cold and sticky. There was no dial tone. I tapped the hook. Nothing. I followed the cord. It was cut. Sliced clean through. I stood there holding the dead receiver. The universe was laughing at me. I looked back at the truck. Beatrice was moving in her sleep, moaning softly. She needed her medicine. She needed a doctor. We didn't have time to drive 2 towns over on a hope. I needed help now. I saw a light in the back of the motel, a maintenance shed. The door was cracked open. I saw tools. I saw a wire cutter. I saw a uniform hanging on a hook. I am a structural engineer. I know how things work. I know how to fix things, and I know how to break them. I walked toward the shed. I was not going to ask for help anymore. I was done asking. I was going to take what I needed to survive, and then I was going to war. The headlights of the gray van cut through the mist like twin blades. It was 3 a.m, and the air in the motel parking lot was heavy with humidity and despair. I watched the vehicle roll to a stop. It was an old Ford Econoline, the kind plumbers or electricians used 20 years ago. It had no windows in the back and a dent in the sliding door. To anyone else, it looked like a junker. To me, it looked like a chariot. The driver's side window rolled down. A face appeared. It was weathered like old leather with a gray beard cut close to the jaw and eyes that were constantly moving, constantly scanning the perimeter. Otis Washington. We had crawled through mud together in Vietnam. We had built skyscrapers together in Atlanta. He was the only man alive who knew where the bodies were buried because he had helped me dig the holes for the foundations. "Get in," Otis said. His voice was gravel and smoke. "Keep your heads down." I opened the sliding door. It groaned on its tracks. I helped Beatrice inside. She moved like a ghost, her movements stiff and mechanical. I climbed in after her and pulled the heavy door shut. The darkness inside was absolute until Otis flipped a switch on the dashboard. A small red tactical light illuminated the cabin. It was filled with surveillance equipment monitors and stacks of files. This was not just a van. It was a mobile command center. Otis did not ask how we were. He did not ask what happened. He just put the van in gear and drove. He took back roads weaving through industrial parks and unlit alleys. He drove with one eye on the rearview mirror, checking for tails. "They tracked your phone," Otis said. He didn't look back at us. I saw the ping on the scanner. "They know you were on the highway." "I threw it out the window," I said. "Good," Otis grunted. "But they have your faces on the wire. Missing persons report. Endangered elderly alert. Your son is playing the concerned citizen card very well." We arrived at Otis's house 40 minutes later. It sat on a dead-end street in a neighborhood that gentrification had forgotten. The windows were barred. The fence was high. We hurried inside. The house smelled of old paper and gun oil. It was messy, but organized a library of secrets. "Sit," Otis commanded. He pointed to a worn leather sofa. "I am going to make coffee. Then we are going to look at the devil in the face." Beatrice sat down. She was trembling. I found a blanket on a chair and wrapped it around her. She looked at me, her eyes wide and glassy. "Why is he doing this, Cyrus?" she whispered. "Why does he hate us?" "He doesn't hate us," I said, though the words tasted like ash. "He just loves money more than he loves us." Otis returned with 3 mugs of black coffee and a thick manila folder. He threw the folder onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. "Sunset Creek," Otis said. I looked at the folder. That was the name on the text message. That was the destination. "I did some digging a few weeks ago," Otis said. "You told me Terrence was asking about your finances. You told me Paige was asking about insurance policies. I got a bad feeling. So I started watching them. And I started watching the places they were visiting." He opened the folder. He spread the photographs out on the table like a tarot card reading from hell. I looked at the first photo. It was taken with a telephoto lens through a chain-link fence. It showed a courtyard of concrete and dead grass. In the center, an old woman was sitting in a wheelchair. Her head was lolled back. She was tied to the chair with a bedsheet. She looked skeletal. I looked at the next photo. It was a close-up of a food tray. It looked like gray slop. There was mold on the bread. I looked at the third photo. It was a row of beds in a large open room. It looked like a barracks. The patients were lying in their own filth. There were no nurses in sight, just a single orderly playing on his phone in the corner. "This is the indigent ward," Otis said. "It is where they put the people the state pays for. The people nobody visits. They drug them to keep them quiet. They feed them garbage to save money. And when they get sick, they don't call a doctor. They just wait." I felt bile rise in my throat. This was where my son was sending us. Not a retirement community. Not a care facility. A holding pen for the dead. Beatrice picked up a photo. Her hand shook so violently the image blurred. It showed a man with bruises on his arms. Defensive wounds. Why, she asked. Her voice broke. "We have money. The house is worth $500,000. Why put us here? Why not a nice place? Because a nice place costs $5,000 a month, Otis said. And Terrence doesn't have $5,000 a month. In fact, Terrence doesn't have $5. Otis pulled out a second stack of papers. These were financial records, bank statements, gambling logs. Your daughter-in-law, Otis said, pointing to a picture of Paige. She likes the ponies, and she likes online poker, and she is terrible at both. I leaned forward. I looked at the numbers. They were staggered. -10,000. -50,000. She is in the hole, Otis said. Deep. She owes $200,000 to a syndicate operating out of Miami. These aren't banks, Cyrus. These are the kind of people who break kneecaps for interest payments. They gave her a deadline. End of the month. I did the math in my head. It was the middle of the month. She has 2 weeks, I said. Otis nodded. And she has no assets, except one. My house, I said. Your house, Otis confirmed. Terrence is selling it to pay her debt, but he can't sell it if you are living in it, and he can't sell it if you object, so he needs you gone. He needs you incapacitated. He needs you declared incompetent so he can sign the deed himself. He is selling us for parts, I said. My voice was cold. It sounded like steel snapping. Beatrice started to cry. It was a low, keening sound. It was the sound of a mother mourning a child who was still alive. He chose her, she sobbed. He chose that woman over us. He chose his life, Otis said. If he doesn't pay, they kill him too. He is scared. A scared man is a dangerous man. I looked at the photos of Sunset Creek again. I looked at the old woman tied to the chair. That was supposed to be Beatrice. I looked at the man with the bruises. That was supposed to be me. The grief I felt began to harden. It compressed. It turned into something dense and heavy. I stopped seeing Terrence as my son. I stopped seeing the boy I taught to throw a baseball. I saw a structural flaw. I saw a crack in the foundation that threatened the entire building. And as an engineer, I knew there was only one way to deal with a flaw that deep. You don't patch it. You don't paint over it. You demolish it. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the street through the bars. Otis, I said. Do you have a burner phone? Otis reached into his pocket and tossed me a cheap plastic flip phone. Untraceable, he said. I opened it. The keypad lit up blue. I dialed a number I had memorized years ago. It was a number for emergencies, a number for when the legal system failed and you needed a shark. Mr. Reynolds answered on the second ring. His voice was smooth, cultured, and devoid of warmth. Reynolds, he said. It is Cyrus, I said. Cyrus, Reynolds said. His tone didn't change. It is 3 a.m. This better be good. I need to activate Protocol Omega, I said. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint scratch of a pen on paper. Omega Reynolds repeated. That is the nuclear option, Cyrus. That means total asset liquidation. That means scorched earth. Are you sure? I looked at Beatrice huddled under the blanket. I looked at the photos of the abuse. I looked at the evidence of my son's betrayal. I am sure, I said. Tell me the situation, Reynolds said. I told him. I told him about the party, the text messages, the police stop, the frozen accounts, the nursing home. When I finished, Reynolds hummed, a low, thoughtful sound. We have a problem, Cyrus, he said. What problem? We know what they are doing, Reynolds said, but we can't prove it in court. Not yet. The text messages on the iPad are good, but a good lawyer could argue they were taken out of context. The financial records show debt, but not intent to harm. If we go to a judge now, Terrence will show up with tears in his eyes. He will say he was trying to put you in a care facility for your own safety. He will say you are paranoid, and given your flight tonight, the judge might believe him. So what do? I asked. We need a smoking gun, Reynolds said. We need indisputable proof of abuse. We need proof that Sunset Creek is a criminal enterprise, and that your son knowingly sent you there to rot. How do we get that? We need a witness inside, Reynolds said. We need someone to document the conditions. We need someone to record the conversations with the staff. We need someone to record Terrence signing the admission papers that waive your rights. I realized what he was saying. I felt a cold chill spread through my chest. You want me to go in, I said. I am not telling you to do anything, Reynolds said. I am telling you that if you want to put your son and his wife in prison for 20 years, If you want to destroy the facility that abuses the elderly, I need evidence that can withstand a grand jury. I need you to be the bait." I looked at Otis. He was watching me. He knew what Reynolds was saying. He gave a slow, grim nod. "It is dangerous." Reynolds continued. "Once you are in, you have no rights. They can sedate you. They can restrain you. If we don't get you out in time, you could disappear in the system." "How long?" I asked. 48 hours, Reynolds said. "Give me 48 hours inside. Use the spy gear Otis has. Record everything. Let Terrence think he has won. Let him sign the papers. Let him sell the house. And then when the ink is dry, we spring the trap." I looked at Beatrice. She had stopped crying. She was looking at me with terror, but also with trust. She trusted me to build a bridge that would carry us over this abyss. "I can't take Beatrice," I said. "No," Reynolds agreed. "She stays with Otis. She is too fragile. You go in alone. We spin a story. We say you got separated. We say she wandered off. You let the police catch you." I took a deep breath. I was 70 years old. My back hurt. My knees clicked. But my mind was sharp and my anger was infinite. "Do it," I said. "Very well," Reynolds said. "I will have the papers ready. I will have the team ready. Good luck, Cyrus." I hung up the phone. I looked at Otis. "You heard him?" I asked. I heard Otis said. "I need a wire," I said. "I need a camera. And I need you to promise me something." "Anything," Otis said. "If I don't make it out," I said. "If they drug me too much. If my heart gives out. You take care of Beatrice. And you make sure Terrence never sees a dime." Otis stood up. He walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. It was heavy and solid. "You are coming out, Cyrus," he said. "And when you do, we are going to burn that place to the ground." I nodded. I walked over to Beatrice. I knelt in front of her. "I have to go away for a little bit," I said. "No," she said, grabbing my collar. "No, Cyrus. They will kill you in there." "They won't," I said. "I am not going in as a patient. I am going in as a spy. I am going in as a soldier." She touched my face. Her fingers were warm. "You come back to me," she whispered. "I promise," I said. I stood up. I looked at the door. The sun would be up soon. The hunt would intensify. Otis handed me a small black device. It looked like a button on a shirt. "Camera," he said. "High definition. 4 days of battery. It transmits directly to my server." He handed me another device. Tiny. The size of a grain of rice. "Tracker," he said. "Put it in your shoe. Slice the sole open. Glue it inside. If they take your clothes, they might leave the shoes. If they take the shoes, swallow it." I took the devices. I felt a strange calm settle over me. I was done running. I was done hiding. It was time to let the wolf catch me, because the wolf didn't know that I was made of poison. I turned to Otis. "Let's get to work," I said. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, but I did not put it down. I sat on the edge of Otis's worn leather sofa, staring at the television screen as if it were a window into a burning building. It was 8 in the morning. The local news station was broadcasting a special report. The headline at the bottom of the screen read, "Missing and Endangered Elderly Couple." Above the text was a photo of me and Beatrice taken at a church picnic 5 years ago. We looked happy. We looked sane. Then the camera cut to a live feed. There was my son. Terrence stood on the front lawn of the house I had built. He was wearing a fresh suit, but his tie was loosened just enough to suggest distress. He looked directly into the camera. His eyes were red and swollen. I had to give him credit. It was a performance worthy of Broadway. "Please," Terrence choked out, wiping a non-existent tear from his cheek. "If anyone sees them, please call the police immediately." My father, Cyrus King, is confused. He has been battling early-onset dementia for months, though he tries to hide it. He thinks people are stealing from him. He thinks his family is against him. It is the disease talking. Last night he became violent. He kidnapped my mother and stole a truck. He is not in his right mind. He is a danger to himself and to her. I felt Otis's hand on my shoulder. He gripped it tight. I watched as the reporter nodded sympathetically. She turned to the camera. "You heard it here first, folks. A loving son desperate to find his parents before tragedy strikes. Police say Cyrus King may be armed and is considered unstable. If you see this man, do not approach. Call 911. I looked at the comments scrolling on the bottom of the screen from the station's social media feed. Poor son. Hope they find the old man before he hurts someone. Dementia is a monster. Praying for this family. I think I saw that truck on I-85. Calling it in now. They were hunting me. My own community. The people I had built bridges for. The people I had sat next to in the pews. Terrence had turned them all into his personal surveillance network. He had stripped me of my history and replaced it with a diagnosis. I was no longer a man. I was a condition. I was a problem to be solved. Beatrice was sitting in the corner chair. She was rocking back and forth slightly. She was not looking at the TV. She was looking at her hands. "He is good," she whispered. "He is so good at lying. I taught him how to speak Cyrus. I taught him how to look people in the eye. And he is using it to bury us." "We have to move," Otis said. His voice was low and urgent. He moved to the window and peered through the blinds. "This house isn't safe anymore. If they tracked the truck to the county line, they will start grid searching." I stood up. My knees popped. I felt every year of my 70 years in that moment. The anger that had fueled me the night before was now a cold, heavy weight in my gut. "Where do we go?" I asked. The plan was for me to go in alone, to get caught, but not like this. Not with the whole world watching. Before Otis could answer, the phone on the wall rang. It was a landline, old and loud. We all froze. Otis didn't answer it. He stared at it like it was a bomb. Then through the front window I saw movement. Across the street, Mrs. Higgins. She was a woman who spent her days watching the neighborhood from her porch. She was standing by her railing phone pressed to her ear. She was looking directly at Otis's house. Directly at the van in the driveway. She pointed. Otis swore. He moved fast for a man of his age. He grabbed the surveillance hard drives. He grabbed the burner phone. "They are here," Otis growled. Higgins made the van. She watches the news religiously. She just connected the dots. We heard the sirens then. Not one, not two. A chorus of them. They were close. They had been waiting just out of sight, waiting for a confirmation. Beatrice stood up. Her face was pale. "Cyrus," she said. Her voice trembled. "It is okay," I said. I moved to her. I held her face in my hands. "Listen to me. This is part of the plan. It is happening faster than we wanted, but the objective is the same. I have to go inside." "But not me," she said. "You said I would stay with Otis." "We don't have a choice now," I said. "If they find you here, they take you too." Bang, bang, bang. The front door shook in its frame. "Police, open up." "We have a warrant." Otis looked at me. His eyes were hard flint. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the tiny tracker. He dropped it on the floor next to my boots. "Put them on," he hissed. I sat down. I jammed my feet into my heavy work boots. As I shoved my right foot in, I felt Otis's hand guide the small device into the hidden compartment we had cut into the thick rubber heel earlier that morning. He pressed the flap of rubber back down. It was seamless. "Adult Protective Services is with them," Otis whispered as the pounding on the door got louder. "I saw the van. They have an emergency guardianship order. Terrence got a judge to sign it this morning. They have the legal right to take you, Cyrus." I tied my laces. My hands were steady. "Let them in, Otis," I said. Otis looked at me one last time. He looked at the man he had fought beside in the jungle. He nodded. "Give them hell, Cyrus." Otis unlocked the deadbolt. He opened the door. The room was instantly flooded with uniforms. Blue, brown, black vests. They poured in like water breaching a dam. "Hands. Let me see your hands." I stood up slowly. I held my hands out, palms open. Beatrice stood beside me, clutching my arm. "That's him!" A woman in a suit shouted. She was standing behind the wall of police officers. She held a clipboard like a weapon. "That is Cyrus King. Secure him. He is combative." 2 officers grabbed me. They didn't ask questions. They spun me around. They wrenched my arms behind my back. The metal cuffs bit into my wrists. I didn't fight. I didn't struggle. I went limp. I let them handle me like a sack of cement. Beatrice screamed, "Don't hurt him." He didn't do anything. They grabbed her too, gently but firmly. "It is for his own good, ma'am," the woman in the suit said. "We are here to help. Your son is very worried about you." "My son is a thief," I shouted. The words echoed off the walls. "He is stealing our lives." The officer pushed my head down. Save it for the judge, buddy. You have the right to remain silent. I caught Otis's eye as they dragged me out the door. He was standing against the wall, hands raised, playing the part of the innocent bystander. He tapped his right foot. Just a subtle movement. A signal. The tracker is live. They marched me out onto the lawn. The sun was blinding. The street was lined with police cars and an ambulance. And there, standing by a sleek black sedan, was Terrence. He was still wearing his suit from the TV broadcast. He looked concerned. He looked devastated. He looked like the perfect grieving son. "Dad," he yelled. He ran toward the police line. "Oh, thank God. Dad, are you okay?" He tried to hug me. I pulled away, causing the officers to tighten their grip on my arms. "Get away from me," I spat. Terrence stopped. He looked at the officers. He looked at the neighbors who had gathered on their lawns to watch the show. He put on a face of tragic resignation. "See," he said to the social worker. "He doesn't even recognize me. The paranoia is getting worse. He thinks I am the enemy." "You are the enemy," I said. My voice was low and dangerous. "And you made a mistake, boy. You let the wolf into the house." Terrence leaned in close. He pretended to adjust my collar. He pretended to be a caring son fixing his father's clothes after a rough night. But his whisper was for me alone. "The wolf is in a cage now, old man," he hissed. "And I have the key. You signed it over to me 6 months ago. Remember?" He stepped back. He looked at the social worker. "Take them to the facility," he said. "I have already arranged for their admission at Sunset Creek. The director is expecting them. I will follow you there to sign the final paperwork." The social worker nodded. "We have the emergency custody order, Mr. King. We will transport them immediately." They shoved me toward the back of a transport van. Not a police car, a medical transport. It had barred windows and a cage between the driver and the passengers. They put Beatrice in first. She was weeping softly. Then they shoved me in beside her. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. The darkness inside was sudden and complete. I looked through the wire mesh of the rear window. I saw Terrence standing on the curb. He was smiling. It wasn't a smile of relief, it was a smile of conquest. He took out his phone and made a call. I knew who he was calling. He was calling Paige. He was telling her the house was empty. He was telling her the money was safe. The van lurched forward. We were moving. Beatrice grabbed my handcuffed hands. Her fingers were ice cold. "Where are they taking us?" she whispered. "To hell," I said. I shifted my feet. I could feel the hard lump of the tracker in my right heel. It was a small discomfort, a pebble in my shoe. But it was also a beacon. Terrence thought he was sending us away to rot. He thought he was burying his problems in a cheap nursing home on the edge of town. He didn't know that he was actually transporting a surveillance device directly into the heart of his criminal enterprise. I looked at Beatrice. "Don't cry, Bea," I said. "How can I not cry?" she asked. "We lost." "No," I said. I looked at the barred windows. I looked at the road stretching out behind us. I looked at my son shrinking in the distance until he was nothing but a small, dark stain on the landscape. "We didn't lose," I said. "We just infiltrated." The van turned onto the highway. We were heading west, toward the sunset, toward the creek, toward the place where old people went to die. I closed my eyes and began to count. I needed to memorize the route. I needed to be sharp. Reynolds said I needed 48 hours. The clock started now. The van doors opened and the smell hit me first. It was a thick cocktail of industrial bleach, boiled cabbage, and human waste. It was the smell of a place where dignity goes to die. 2 orderlies grabbed my arms and hauled me out of the transport vehicle. My knees buckled as my heavy boots hit the pavement. I stumbled, but they did not let me fall. They dragged me. Beatrice was behind me. I heard her gasp as the humidity of the Georgia night wrapped around us. We were not at a front entrance with a portico and a receptionist. We were at a loading dock. There were dumpsters overflowing with trash bags to my left. There was a metal door with a keypad to my right. Above the door, a single yellow bulb flickered, casting long, twitching shadows against the brick wall. This was Sunset Creek. It was not the brochure Terrence had shown the neighbors. It was a warehouse for the unwanted. "Move it." Pops, one of the orderlies, grunted. He was a mountain of a man with a neck as thick as a utility pole and eyes that looked dead. He shoved me toward the metal door. I stumbled forward. I kept my head down. I let my shoulders slump. I shuffled my feet. I had to sell the part. I had to be the confused, frail old man my son had described to the police. I had to hide the structural engineer who was currently calculating the thickness of the steel door and memorizing the keypad code the orderly punched in. 4291 star. The door buzzed and clicked. We were pushed inside. The air conditioning was frigid. It was a shock to the system after the heat outside. We were in a long hallway lined with linoleum that had been buffed to a high shine but was yellowed with age. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed with an angry insectile buzz. They marched us past a nurse station. The woman behind the glass did not look up. She was scrolling on her phone. She did not care that 2 new inmates had just arrived. She did not care that one of them was crying softly. We stopped at a set of double doors marked Section C. The orderly swiped a badge. The doors swung open. "Welcome home," the orderly said. There was no warmth in his voice, just boredom. Section C was a nightmare. It was a large open bay divided into cubicles by waist-high walls and metal bars that went floor to ceiling. It looked less like a hospital and more like a kennel. There were moans echoing off the concrete walls. There was the sound of coughing. There was the sound of someone screaming for their mother over and over again. "Strip," the orderly said. He pointed to a pile of folded hospital gowns on a metal cart. "Put these on. Personal effects go in the bag." This was the moment. This was the critical failure point. I looked at the plastic bag he held out. I looked at my boots. The right heel held the tracker. The tracker was my lifeline. It was the only way Reynolds and Otis would know exactly where we were in this labyrinth. If I lost the boots, I lost the war. I started to unbutton my shirt. My fingers were clumsy. I let them shake. I took off my jacket. I took off my pants. I stood there in my undershirt and boxers, shivering in the cold air. "Shoes and socks," the orderly barked. I sat on the edge of the metal cot. I reached for my laces. I untied the left boot. I took it off. I handed it to him. Then I reached for the right boot. I grabbed my ankle. I let out a low moan. I started to rock back and forth. "Hurts," I mumbled. My feet. The swelling. The diabetes. "Take it off," the orderly said. He snapped the bag. "I can't." I whined. I made my voice high and thin. I squeezed my eyes shut. "I need them. The doctor said I need the support. My arches. The pain." The orderly stepped closer. He loomed over me. "Listen to me, old man. No outside clothes. That is the rule. Give me the boot or I will take it." I had to escalate. I had to make myself repulsive. I had to make myself a problem he did not want to solve. I grabbed the boot tight. I started to wail. It was a pathetic, senile sound. I clawed at my own leg. "It burns," I shouted. "Don't touch it. The sores. The fluid. It leaks." I looked up at him with wide, crazy eyes. I let a line of drool escape the corner of my mouth. "If you take it off, the skin comes with it," I screamed. "It is stuck. The pus makes it stick." The orderly recoiled, his face twisted in disgust. He looked at my boot. It was old leather. It looked heavy. He looked at my wild eyes. He looked at the paperwork in his hand. He was doing the math. If he forced the boot off and I was telling the truth about open sores, he would have a biohazard mess on his hands. He would have to fill out an incident report. He would have to clean it up. He was a bully, but he was a lazy bully. "Fine," he spat. "Keep the damn shoes. But if you track mud on my floor, you act as the mop." He threw a hospital gown at my face. It smelled of industrial starch and vinegar. "Put that on. And shut up." I clutched the gown to my chest. I hid the triumph in my eyes. I had won. The tracker was safe. He turned to Beatrice. She was standing by her bed, clutching her purse. "Give me the bag, lady," he said. Beatrice looked at me. I gave her a tiny nod. She handed over the purse. She handed over her dress. She put on the thin blue gown. She looked small. She looked fragile. But her chin was high. The orderly threw our clothes into a bin. He didn't tag them. He didn't log them. He just tossed them like garbage. He turned and walked out of the cubicle, locking the metal gate behind him with a heavy clank. "Lights out in 10, he shouted over his shoulder. I waited until his heavy footsteps faded down the hall. Then I moved. I did not sit on the bed and weep. I went to work. I was a structural engineer. My job was to assess environments. My job was to find weaknesses. I walked to the perimeter of our cage. I gripped the bars. They were cold steel painted white. I shook them, solid, anchored into the concrete floor. No way to force them without tools. I looked up. The ceiling was drop tile, acoustical panels, easy to push up, but there would be no space to crawl up there. It would just be ductwork and wires. I looked at the hallway. I counted the cameras. There was one dome camera at the end of the corridor near the nurse station. There was another at the far end near the fire exit. But the middle of the hallway, the section right in front of our cell, was a dead zone. The angles didn't overlap. It was a blind spot. I looked at the windows. They were high up on the wall. They were reinforced with wire mesh. I dragged a chair over and stood on it. I inspected the frame. It was welded shut. But the caulking around the edge was old. It was dry and cracking. With a piece of metal, a spoon handle, maybe I could chip it away. It wouldn't get us out, but it might let fresh air in, or smoke out. I stepped down. I looked at the routine. I watched the staff. There were 2 nurses for the whole ward. Maybe 40 patients. They were overworked. They moved fast, checking charts, dispensing pills in little paper cups. They didn't look at the patients' faces. They looked at wristbands. They were on a schedule. I watched the security guard. He was a younger man sitting at a desk by the double doors. He had his feet up. He was watching a video on his phone. He had headphones in. He wasn't watching the monitors. He wasn't watching the floor. He was checked out. Laziness. That was the structural flaw of Sunset Creek. The building was strong, but the people running it were weak. They didn't care. And apathy creates cracks. A cart rattled down the hall. It was dinner. A woman in a hairnet shoved 2 plastic trays through a slot in the bars. "Eat," she said. I took the trays. I brought them to the small table between our beds. I looked at the food. It was a scoop of white lumpy mush that smelled like oatmeal but looked like paste. A slice of white bread that was starting to curl at the edges. A cup of lukewarm water. Beatrice sat on her bed. She pulled her knees up to her chest. She was shivering again. "I can't eat this, Cyrus," she whispered. "You have to," I said. "You need the calories. We need strength." I took a spoonful of the mush. It tasted like nothing. It tasted like wet cardboard. I forced it down. My stomach rebelled, but I forced it to stay down. "Eat the bread, Beatrice," I said. "It is safe." She took the bread. She took small bites. She looked around the room. Her eyes landed on a man in the cell across from us. He was sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth. He was naked from the waist down. He was singing a song to himself, a lullaby. "Is this where we die?" Beatrice asked. "No," I said. I moved my chair closer to the bars that separated our sleeping areas. I reached my hand through the gap. She reached out and took it. Her hand was cold. Her skin felt thin like parchment. "This is not a home," I said. "It is a bank vault. They put us here to store us until they can cash the check, but vaults can be broken into, and they can be broken out of." I looked at my boots. I tapped the right heel against the floor. "Otis knows where we are," I said. "The tracker is working. Reynolds is preparing the paperwork. We just have to hold on." "How long?" she asked. 48 hours, I said. "We just need to survive 48 hours. The lights in the hallway flickered and then slammed off. The ward was plunged into semi-darkness. Only the red glow of the exit signs and the pale blue light from the nurse station remained. The sounds of the night began. The coughing got worse. The man across the hall stopped singing and started weeping. Somewhere deep in the facility, a door slammed. I squeezed Beatrice's hand. "Listen to me," I whispered. "Tomorrow they will try to drug us. They will bring pills. Do not swallow them. Hide them under your tongue. Spit them out when they leave. We need to be sharp." "I can't sleep," she said. "I am afraid if I close my eyes I won't wake up." "I will watch," I said. "I will take the first watch. You sleep. I am right here. I am holding your hand. I am not letting go." She nodded. She lay down on the thin mattress. It crinkled like plastic. She pulled the scratchy wool blanket up to her chin. She did not let go of my hand. I sat in the dark. I listened to the rhythm of the ward. I counted the seconds between the security guards' patrols. 20 minutes. He moved every 20 minutes. I watched the nurse station. Shift change was at 11. The new nurses were tired before they even started. They spent 10 minutes gossiping before they started their rounds. I was building a map in my head. I was calculating the load. I was finding the stress points. My son had sent me here to fade away. He thought I was a crumbling old building that just needed to be demolished. He didn't realize that I was the demolition expert. I looked at the camera at the end of the hall. I stared right into the lens. I knew Otis was hacking the feed. I knew he was watching. "I am here, Otis," I thought. I am in the belly of the beast. And I brought a match. Wait for the signal. I closed my eyes for a second just to rest them. When I opened them, a shadow fell across the floor. Someone was standing outside our cage. It wasn't a nurse. It wasn't the guard. It was Terrence. He was standing there in the dark watching us. He was wearing a baseball cap pulled low, but I knew his stance. I knew the way he held his shoulders. He came to the bars. He gripped them. He looked at his mother sleeping. He looked at me sitting in the chair. He smiled. It was a sad, twisted smile. "Comfortable, Dad," he whispered. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just squeezed Beatrice's hand tighter. "This is the VIP suite," Terrence whispered. I spared no expense. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. He tapped it against the bars. "Tomorrow," he said. "Tomorrow we sign the papers, and then you can rest. You can rest forever." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the hallway. I watched him go. I felt the cold anger settle in my chest, heavy and solid as a concrete block. "Come back tomorrow, son," I thought. "Bring your papers. Bring your lies. I will be waiting, and I will be ready. 3 days. That is how long a man can go without water before his kidneys shut down. It is also how long it takes for a son to sell his soul completely." We had been in the cage for 72 hours. My body ached from the thin mattress and the damp cold of the concrete floor. I smelled like sweat and old soup. Beatrice was curled in the corner of her bed, wrapped in the thin gray blanket they gave us. She was sleeping or pretending to sleep. I was awake. I was always awake. I sat in the metal chair facing the hallway. My eyes were fixed on the double doors at the end of the corridor. I knew they were coming. The tracker in my boot had been vibrating in a specific pattern for the last hour. 3 short pulses. 3 long pulses. That was the signal from Otis. The vultures were circling. At 10 in the morning, the double doors swung open. The sound of heavy boots and high heels clicked against the linoleum floor. It was a sharp, aggressive rhythm that did not belong in a place of shuffling slippers and silence. I did not move my head. I let my chin drop to my chest. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I let my hands tremble in my lap. I had to look broken. I had to look medicated. I had to look like a man who had nothing left to fight with. Terrence walked in first. He was wearing a navy blue suit that looked brand new. He had a fresh haircut. He looked like a man who had just won the lottery. Behind him was Paige. She was wearing sunglasses indoors and a white dress that looked too bright for a nursing home. She held a handkerchief over her nose as if the very air we breathed was toxic to her. Trailing them were 2 men I did not recognize. One was tall and thin with a briefcase, the lawyer. The other was short and sweating, holding a notary stamp like a weapon. These were the executioners. They stopped in front of our cage. The security guard unlocked the gate with a heavy clank. Terrence stepped inside. He looked at me. He looked at the peeling paint on the walls. He looked at his mother, sleeping in the corner. For a second, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Shame. But he blinked, and it was gone, replaced by the cold, hard shine of greed. "Hey, Dad," Terrence said. His voice was too loud, too cheerful. It bounced off the concrete walls. I slowly lifted my head. I blinked my eyes as if I were struggling to focus. I made my movements sluggish. "Terrence," I mumbled. My voice was raspy. I had not had water in 6 hours. "Yeah, Dad." "It is me," Terrence said. He pulled up a plastic chair and sat knee to knee with me. He smelled of expensive cologne and mints. "Look, we brought some people to help you. We want to get you out of this room. We want to get you into the VIP suite upstairs. You would like that, right? Soft beds, real food." I looked at him. I looked at the lie sitting on his face. "Water," I whispered. Paige sighed loudly from the doorway. "Can we hurry this up?" she snapped. "The smell in here is making me nauseous." "Give him water," Terrence said to the lawyer. "We need him lucid enough to hold a pen." The lawyer handed me a plastic cup. I drank it. I let my hands shake so much that half the water spilled down my chin and onto the hospital gown. I saw Paige look away in disgust. Good. Let them see a ruin. Let them underestimate the structural integrity of the man beneath the gown. The lawyer opened his briefcase. He pulled out a stack of documents. They were thick. They were stapled. They were the keys to my kingdom, Mr. King, the lawyer said. His voice was dry and bored. He did not look at me. He looked at the papers. These are the transfer documents we discussed. This grants your son Terrence full power of attorney and transfers the title of your property at 450 Oak Street to him immediately. It also grants him access to all liquid assets for your continued care. He placed the papers on the small, wobbly table between us. He placed a heavy black pen on top of them. Sign at the bottom of page 4, page 8, and page 12, the lawyer said. And initial here, here, and here. I stared at the papers. The words swam before my eyes. Not because I was drugged, but because the rage was making my vision blur. Transfer of deed, revocable trust dissolution, total asset liquidation. He wasn't just selling the house, he was wiping me out. He was taking the savings, the retirement, the emergency fund. He was taking 40 years of sweat and converting it into chips for his wife's gambling debt. I looked at Terrence. Why, I asked. It was a simple question. Terrence sighed. He put a hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy and fake. Dad, we went over this. You are not capable of managing your affairs anymore. You ran away. You stole a truck. You are confused. I am doing this to protect you. Once the house is sold, I can pay for the best care for you and Mom. You won't have to worry about bills ever again. Liar, I thought. You are doing this to save your own skin. I looked at Beatrice. She had woken up. She was sitting up in bed, pulling the blanket tight around her neck. She looked terrified. She looked at Terrence, and then she looked at me. She gave a microscopic shake of her head. Don't do it. I pushed the papers away. No, I said. My voice was weak but clear. No, it is my house. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The fake warmth evaporated. Terrence's face hardened. He looked back at Paige. Paige stepped into the cell. Her heels clicked sharply on the concrete. She walked past Terrence. She walked past the lawyer. She walked straight to Beatrice's bed. She stood over my wife. She looked down at her with a sneer that twisted her beautiful face into something ugly. Listen to me, you stubborn old man, Paige said. She didn't look at me. She kept her eyes on Beatrice. We don't have time for this. The buyers are waiting. The bank is waiting. She reached out and grabbed a lock of Beatrice's gray hair. She twirled it around her finger. It looked like a caress, but I could see the tension in her knuckles. I could see Beatrice wince. If you don't pick up that pen right now, Paige said, her voice low and venomous, I am going to have a talk with the orderly outside. The big one. The one who hates changing bedpans. I tried to stand up. My legs shook. Leave her alone, I said. Paige pulled the hair tighter. Beatrice whimpered. I will tell him that Beatrice fell, Paige hissed. I will tell him she was trying to escape and she slipped in the shower. Old women have such brittle bones, Cyrus. A hip fracture at her age is basically a death sentence. Infection sets in. Pneumonia follows. It is a slow, painful way to go. She looked at me then. Her eyes were empty holes. Do you want that on your conscience, Cyrus? Do you want to be the reason she dies screaming in this filth because you were too selfish to sign a piece of paper? I froze. I looked at Terrence. He was looking at the floor. He knew what she was doing. He was letting her do it. He was letting his wife threaten his mother with torture. This was the bottom. This was the bedrock of their morality. There was nothing below this. Okay, I said. I sat back down. I let my shoulders slump in defeat. Okay, don't hurt her, please. Paige smiled. She let go of Beatrice's hair. She patted her cheek. See, she said, that wasn't so hard. We all just want what is best. She walked back to Terrence and stood behind him, her hands on his shoulders like a puppet master. Sign the papers, Dad, Terrence said softly. Just sign them, and this is all over. I picked up the pen. It felt heavy in my hand. My hand was trembling, and for the first time it wasn't an act. The adrenaline was coursing through me, making my muscles twitch. I looked at the signature line. Signature of grantor. I remembered the meeting with Reynolds 6 months ago. We had sat in his mahogany office, and he had asked me a strange question. Cyrus, what is the legal name on your birth certificate? I had told him. Cyrus Jeremiah King. And what name is on the deed to the house, he had asked. Cyrus Freeman, I had said. I changed it legally 20 years ago to honor my stepfather who raised me. I never updated the birth certificate, but all my legal assets, the house, the bank accounts, the investments, they are all under Cyrus Freeman. Reynolds had smiled a shark smile. Good. That is our fail-safe. If anyone ever tries to force you to sign a document, if you are ever under duress, you sign your old name. You sign Cyrus King. To the untrained eye, it looks valid. But in a court of law, a document transferring assets owned by Cyrus Freeman but signed by Cyrus King is worthless. It is a ghost signature. I looked at the paper. The name typed under the line was Cyrus King. Terrence didn't know. He had never seen the deed. He had never asked. He assumed my name was the name he had always known. I touched the pen to the paper. I let the ink bleed for a second, creating a black blot. I started to write. I made the letters shaky. I made them jagged. I wrote a large looping C. I wrote a jagged Y. I wrote the rest. Cyrus J. King. I signed it on page 4. I signed it on page 8. I signed it on page 12. I put the pen down. I pushed the papers toward the lawyer. "It is done," I whispered. I sounded broken. I sounded defeated. The lawyer picked up the papers. He flipped through them, quickly checking for signatures. He did not check the name. He just checked for ink. "Looks good," the lawyer said. He stamped it with his notary seal. Thump, thump, thump. The sound echoed like dirt hitting a coffin lid. He handed the papers to Terrence. "Congratulations, Mr. King," the lawyer said. "You are now the legal owner of the estate." Terrence took the papers. His hands were shaking too, but with excitement. He stared at them as if they were holy scripture. He ran his thumb over my signature. "We did it," he breathed. Paige let out a squeal of delight. She hugged him from behind, burying her face in his neck. "We are rich, baby," she said. "We are finally rich. No more debts. No more guys in Miami calling us. It is over." Terrence stood up. He looked at me. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say sorry. He didn't even say goodbye. He just looked at me like I was a piece of furniture he had finally sold at a yard sale. "I will tell the nurse to bring you extra pudding tonight," Dad Terrence said. "You earned it." He turned around. The group moved toward the door in a tight formation of greed. "Wait," I said. They stopped. Terrence looked back over his shoulder. "What about Beatrice?" I asked. "What about the hip fracture?" Paige laughed. It was a bright, tinkling sound that had no place in a dungeon. "Don't worry, Cyrus," she said. "As long as you stay quiet, she stays safe. Just enjoy your retirement. You have a roof over your head. What more do you want?" They walked out. The security guard locked the gate. The heavy metal click finalized the transaction. I listened to their footsteps fade down the hallway. I listened until I heard the outer door open and close. Silence returned to the ward. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty table. Cyrus Beatrice whispered from her bed. Her voice was terrified. "You signed it. You gave them everything." I turned to her. I sat up straight. The trembling in my hands stopped. The slump in my shoulders disappeared. I looked at the camera at the end of the hall. I allowed myself a small, cold smile. "I gave them nothing, Beatrice," I said. "What do you mean?" she asked, sitting up. "I saw you sign." "I signed a name that doesn't own a damn thing," I said. I stood up and walked to the bars. I gripped them tight. "They have a piece of paper," I said, "but they don't have the house. And they just spent $50,000 of stolen money to get a worthless autograph." I looked at my boot. "Reynolds has the video," I said. "He saw the threat. He saw the duress. He saw the fraud. Now we wait." "Beatrice." "For what?" she asked. "For the check to bounce," I said. I went back to my cot and lay down. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 3 days, I felt like I could sleep, because I knew something Terrence didn't. He thought he had just won the lottery, but he had just signed his own confession. And when he tried to cash that ticket, the whole world was going to come crashing down on his head. The house on Oak Street was built in 1982. I laid the foundation myself. I framed the walls with pine I selected by hand. I hung the drywall. I painted the nursery blue for the son I thought would carry my name with honor. Now, through the grainy feed of the security camera I had installed years ago, a feed Otis was now streaming to a tablet in my cell. I watched that same sun tear it apart. Terrence moved through the living room like a tornado of disrespect. He wasn't packing. He was purging. He grabbed the oil painting of my great-grandfather, a man born into slavery, who died a landowner, and tossed it onto a pile of garbage bags in the center of the room. The frame cracked. The canvas tore. "It's junk," Paige said. She was standing by the fireplace holding a porcelain vase Beatrice had bought on our 10th anniversary. She looked at it, sneered, and dropped it into a trash bin. It shattered with a sound that made me flinch even through the tiny speaker. "Get rid of it all," Terrence said. He was sweating. He was manic. "The estate sale people are coming at noon for the furniture. The rest goes to the dump. We need this place empty and staged by 2 o'clock. I watched as they stripped my life down to the studs. My engineering degrees were swept into a box marked trash. Beatrice's collection of church hats, her pride and joy, were stuffed into black plastic bags like lawn clippings. They didn't pause to look at the photos. They didn't hesitate over the family Bible. They just cleared the space to make way for the money. It was a violation. It was a desecration. I sat on my cot in the nursing home, my fists clenched so tight my nails cut into my palms. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break the bars, but I forced myself to watch. I forced myself to remember every item they destroyed, because every broken frame was another year added to their sentence. At 1 o'clock, a black limousine pulled up to the curb. I saw it on the exterior camera. A man stepped out. He was dressed in an Italian suit that cost more than Terrence made in a month. He wore dark sunglasses and carried a silver briefcase. This was Mr. Sterling. He wasn't a real investor. He was an associate of Reynolds, my lawyer. He was an actor playing the role of a lifetime, and his audience was a desperate, greedy man. Terrence ran to the door to greet him. He wiped his sweaty palms on his pants. He put on his best salesman smile. "Mr. Sterling," Terrence said, bowing slightly. "Welcome. Please come in. The house is a bit chaotic. We are just finishing the move." Sterling walked in. He didn't smile. He looked around the empty living room. He tapped the walls. He looked at the floors. "Solid construction," Sterling said. His voice was flat. "Good bones. I am looking for a property to flip quickly. I don't care about the condition. I care about the title." "Is the title clear?" Terrence nodded vigorously. "Crystal clear. I have the power of attorney and the deed transfer right here, signed and notarized this morning. I am the sole owner." "Show me," Sterling said. "Sterling." Terrence fumbled with a folder on the kitchen island. He pulled out the papers I had signed with my old name. He handed them over. Sterling put on reading glasses. He scanned the documents. He didn't look closely at the signature. He looked for the notary stamp. He looked for the date. "It appears to be in order," Sterling said. He closed the folder. "I am a busy man, Mr. King. I don't like negotiations. I don't like bidding wars. I'm going to make you one offer. Cash. Closing in 24 hours. Take it or leave it." Terrence's eyes went wide. I could see the greed vibrating off him. "How much?" he asked. $750,000, Sterling said. I saw Paige gasp. The house was worth $500,000 on a good day. 750 was a fantasy. It was a lottery win. It was a trap. "Done," Terrence said. He didn't even look at Paige. He shouted it. "Done. We accept," Good Sterling said. He placed the briefcase on the island. He clicked the latches open. Inside were stacks of $100 bills. $50,000. "This is the non-refundable deposit," Sterling said. "To lock in the contract. The remaining $700,000 will be wired to the trust account listed in the paperwork upon closing tomorrow." Terrence stared at the money. He reached out and touched it. It was real. "Sign here," Sterling said, pushing a single-page contract forward. Terrence signed. He didn't read it. He didn't look at the fine print. He didn't see the clause Reynolds had buried in paragraph 4. Clause 4B. All deposit monies are considered trust assets and must be deposited into the grantor's primary holding account until final closing. Personal use of deposit funds prior to title transfer constitutes embezzlement of trust property. Terrence signed his name with a flourish. "Pleasure doing business with you," Sterling said. He handed Terrence the briefcase. He turned and walked out. As soon as the door closed, the celebration began. It was grotesque. Paige screamed. She grabbed handfuls of cash and threw them in the air. "We are rich," she yelled. "We are actually rich." Terrence grabbed her and kissed her hard. "I told you," he said. "I told you the old man was a gold mine." He looked at the money. $50,000. "Pay the guys in Miami," Terrence said. "Give them 20. That keeps them off our backs." "And the rest?" Paige asked. Terrence grinned. He looked at his wrist. His watch was a cheap digital knockoff. "We celebrate," he said. "I have always wanted a Porsche, and you need a new ring. We deserve it, babe. We put up with his crap for years. This is our payday." I watched them. I watched my son take the money that legally belonged to the estate he claimed to protect. I watched him count out $20,000 and put it in an envelope for a loan shark. I watched him stuff the rest into his pockets. He was committing a felony on camera. He was digging his own grave with a silver shovel. Within an hour, they were gone. The cameras showed them leaving in Terrence's sedan. They were heading to the luxury car dealership downtown. I leaned back on my cot. I felt tired. Not the tired of old age, but the tired of a man who has seen too much ugliness. Beatrice was sitting next to me. She hadn't watched the feed. She couldn't bear it. "Is it done?" she asked. "He took the bait." I said. "He took the money." She closed her eyes. "Then he is gone," she whispered. "My son is gone." "He was gone a long time ago, Bea," I said. "We just didn't want to see it." The afternoon dragged on. The nursing home was a symphony of misery. Nurses shouting, patients crying, the smell of urine and bleach getting stronger in the heat. Around 6 o'clock, the orderly, the big one who had tried to take my boots, walked up to the bars. He was holding a phone. "Phone call for the inmate," he sneered. "It's your son. He says it is important." He passed the phone through the bars. I took it. I put it to my ear. "Hello," I said. My voice was raspy. "Hey, Dad," Terrence said. He sounded drunk. There was loud music in the background. The engine of a high-performance car was revving. "Terrence," I said. "Where are you celebrating?" he shouted. "Celebrating your new life, and mine. Listen, I just called the facility director." "Oh," I said. "Yeah," Terrence said. I looked at the budget. "You know, for your care. It is pretty steep. $7,000 a month for the VIP package. There was no VIP package. We were in a cage. But he was paying for a VIP package on paper. He was skimming the difference." "So I made an executive decision," Terrence said. "I told them to downgrade you to the basic plan, cut the meal service to twice a day, no physical therapy, no extra meds." I gripped the phone. He had just received $50,000 in cash. He was about to receive $750,000 more, and he was cutting our food to save a few pennies. Why, I asked. "Economics, Dad," he laughed. "A penny saved is a penny earned. You taught me that. Besides, you don't need much. You just sit there. You are not burning calories." He revved the engine of his new car. "Anyway, gotta go," he said. "We are going to a steakhouse, the big one downtown. Going to get a tomahawk ribeye. You enjoy your... whatever they feed you." He hung up. I handed the phone back to the orderly. "Bad news?" the orderly asked, smirking. I looked him in the eye. I stood up straight. I didn't look like a confused old man anymore. I looked like a structural engineer who had just identified the final stress fracture. "No," I said. "Good news." I walked back to my cot. I sat down. I looked at my boots. The tracker in my heel buzzed. Once. Twice. That was the signal. Reynolds had the contract. He had the video of the money exchange. He had the recording of the phone call where Terrence cut our food support. The trap was set. The bait was taken. The jaws were ready to snap. "Tonight," I said to Beatrice. She looked up. "Tonight, we leave tonight," I said. I looked at the camera in the hallway. I knew Otis was watching. "Get the van ready, Otis," I thought. I looked at the window with the loose caulking. I looked at the fire alarm on the wall 10 feet away. My son was eating steak and driving a Porsche bought with stolen money. He thought I was starving in the dark. He was right about one thing. I was starving. I was starving for justice. And tonight the feast would begin. The vibration in my right heel started at exactly 2 in the morning. It was a rhythmic pulse against my arch. One long, 2 short, 1 long. It was the signal. Otis was outside. The extraction team was in position. I sat up on the cot. The springs groaned beneath me, but the sound was swallowed by the ambient noise of the ward. The man across the hall was snoring. Someone 2 cells down was weeping softly. The air conditioner hummed with a rattling death rattle. I looked at Beatrice. She was awake. She was lying perfectly still, her eyes fixed on me in the darkness. She did not need to ask if it was time. She saw the set of my jaw. She saw me reach under the mattress. I pulled out the metal support rod I had spent the last 6 hours working loose from the frame of the bed. It was a piece of cheap steel about 18 inches long with a jagged edge where the weld had snapped. It wasn't a crowbar. It was a conductor. I stood up. My joints popped. I ignored the pain in my lower back. I was not 70 years old tonight. I was 20. I was a combat engineer in the jungle. I had a mission, and I had a target. "Put your shoes on," I whispered to Beatrice. She sat up and slid her feet into the slippers they had given her. They were flimsy foam things. They offered no protection, but they would have to do. "Stay behind me," I said. "When the door opens, we move. We do not run, we walk fast. If we run, we attract the eye. If we walk with purpose, we look like we belong." I walked to the gate of our cubicle. It was locked with a magnetic keypad system. I had been watching the guard. I knew the code was 4 digits. But I didn't need the code. I needed a failure. I looked down the hallway. The night nurse was at her station, her head on the desk asleep. The security guard was gone, likely on a smoke break by the loading dock. This was the window. I jammed the metal rod into the small gap between the keypad casing and the concrete wall. I used my weight to leverage it. The plastic housing cracked with a sharp snap. I dug deeper. I felt the tip of the rod hit the wiring harness. I twisted. There was a pop. A shower of blue sparks erupted from the wall. The smell of ozone and burnt plastic filled the air. The magnetic lock disengaged with a heavy clunk. Then the system panicked. The fire alarm screamed. It was a deafening, pulsating shriek that vibrated in my teeth. The emergency strobes in the ceiling began to flash. White, red, white, red. The hallway transformed into a disorienting tunnel of light and noise. I kicked the gate open. "Let's go," I shouted over the alarm. I grabbed Beatrice's hand. We stepped into the corridor. The chaos I had engineered was instantaneous. Doors to other rooms popped open as the failsafe system released the magnetic locks. Patients began to wander out, confused and terrified by the noise. A woman in a wheelchair was spinning in circles, screaming. A man with a walker was shouting for a nurse. The nurse at the station woke up. She looked around wild-eyed. She grabbed the phone but dropped it. She didn't look at us. She was too busy trying to figure out if she was going to burn to death. Smoke began to curl from the fried keypad. It wasn't a fire, but it looked like one. It smelled like one. We moved down the hallway. I kept my body between Beatrice and the open doors. I guided her toward the east wing. That was where the fire exit was. That was where the blind spot in the cameras ended. We reached the double doors of Section C. They were open. We pushed through into the main administrative corridor. "Hey," a voice boomed. I froze. I knew that voice. It was the big orderly, the one who had tried to take my boots, the one Paige had threatened to use against Beatrice. He was standing by the vending machines, a half-eaten sandwich in his hand. He looked at us. He looked at the flashing lights. He looked at the hospital gown flapping around my legs. "Where do you think you are going, Pops?" he sneered. He tossed the sandwich into a bin. He stepped into the middle of the hallway, blocking our path. He was 6'4". He weighed nearly 300 pounds. He was a wall of meat. "Go back to your room," he said. He cracked his knuckles. "Or I will put you back in it, and this time I will tie you down tight." I looked at Beatrice. Her eyes were wide with terror. She gripped my arm so hard it hurt. "Keep walking toward the door," I told her, what she whispered. "Walk to the door," I said. "Don't stop." I let go of her hand. I stepped forward. The orderly laughed. It was a cruel, wet sound. "Look at you. You think you are tough. You are a dried-up leaf old man. I could break you in half with one hand." He reached for me. He moved slow. He moved like a man who was used to his size being enough. He was used to intimidating confused old people who couldn't fight back. He made a mistake. He reached for my neck. He left his center open. I didn't think. I reacted. The muscle memory from 50 years ago surged through my tired limbs. I didn't try to punch him. My knuckles were brittle. A punch would break my hand before it hurt him. I stepped inside his guard. I dropped my weight. I drove the heel of my palm upward in a short, violent arc. I hit him directly in the Adam's apple. It wasn't a push. It was a strike intended to crush the windpipe. The orderly made a sound like a deflating tire. His eyes bulged. His hands flew to his throat. He gagged. He stumbled backward, fighting for air that wouldn't come. I didn't stop. I used his momentum. I kicked his knee, hard, right on the cap. He went down. He hit the floor with a massive thud that shook the linoleum. He curled into a ball, wheezing, clutching his throat. I stood over him. I was breathing hard. My heart was hammering a dangerous rhythm against my ribs. But I was standing, and he was not. "Don't ever touch my wife again," I said. I turned. Beatrice was standing by the exit door. She was staring at me. She looked like she had just seen a ghost. "Open it," I said. She pushed the crash bar. The alarm on the door screamed, adding to the cacophony. The door swung outward. We stepped into the night air. It was humid. It was hot. It was freedom. We were in the service alley behind the facility. It was dark, illuminated only by the flashing strobe light above the door. "To the left," I shouted. "Toward the fence." We ran. Or rather, we moved as fast as two 70-year-olds in hospital gowns could move. My boots pounded the pavement. Beatrice's slippers slapped against the asphalt. A pair of headlights blinded us. A vehicle roared down the alley, tires screeching. It was moving fast. Too fast. It skidded to a halt 10 feet in front of us. The side door flew open. "Get in," Otis shouted from the driver's seat. I grabbed Beatrice. I practically threw her into the back of the van. I scrambled in after her. I heard shouting behind us. The security guard from the front desk had come out the back door. He was running toward us, fumbling with his belt, reaching for a taser. Otis floored it. The van lurched forward, tires smoking. The sliding door slammed shut due to the momentum. We were thrown back against the equipment racks. I grabbed a strap to steady myself. I pulled Beatrice into a seat and buckled her in. Otis took the corner on 2 wheels. We hit the main road. In the distance, I saw blue lights. Real police this time. Fire trucks, ambulances. They were responding to the alarm. They were racing towards Sunset Creek. We passed them. They didn't look at the old gray plumber's van. They were focused on the smoke rising from the nursing home. We were ghosts again. I leaned my head back against the metal wall of the van. My chest was heaving. My hands were shaking now. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the aches and pains of my age. "We did it," Beatrice whispered. She was crying again. But these were tears of relief. "We are out." I looked at her. Her hair was a mess. Her gown was dirty. She looked beautiful. "We are out," I said. Otis shouted from the front. "Check the bag." "Cyrus under the seat." I looked under the bench seat. There was a duffel bag. I pulled it out. I unzipped it. Inside were clothes, clean clothes, my suit, a dress for Beatrice, and a thick manila envelope. I opened the envelope. It contained a stack of documents, high-resolution photos taken by the button camera I had worn, photos of the moldy food, photos of the restraints, photos of the lack of staff, and it contained a USB drive. Otis looked in the rearview mirror. "Did you get the audio?" he asked. I patted the pocket of the hospital gown where I had stashed the recorder. "I got it all," I said. "I got him threatening us. I got him admitting to the fraud. I got the lawyer notarizing a signature he knew was fake." "Reynolds is waiting at the safe house," Otis said. "He has a team of forensic accountants ready to go. They are going to trace the wire transfer Terrence made with the house money. They are going to freeze it before he can buy a tank of gas." I looked out the back window. The glow of the fire trucks at Sunset Creek was fading in the distance. My son thought he had won. He thought he had cashed out. He was probably sitting in a steakhouse right now, ordering a bottle of wine, toasting to his cleverness. He didn't know that the check was about to bounce. He didn't know that the foundation of his new life was built on quicksand. I reached for Beatrice's hand. "It is over," she said. "No," I said. I looked at the file in my lap. I looked at the evidence of the hell we had just escaped. I thought about the other people in that ward, the man who sang lullabies, the woman who screamed for her mother. They were still there. They were still trapped. "This isn't over," I said. "We escaped the fire. Now we have to go back and burn the monster who started it." Otis turned onto the highway. The city lights of Atlanta twinkled on the horizon. Somewhere in that city, my son was sleeping soundly. "Enjoy your sleep, Terrence," I thought, "because tomorrow I am going to wake you up, and it is going to be a rude awakening. Tomorrow the structural failure begins, and I am going to be the one swinging the wrecking ball." 2 days. That is how long it takes for a parasite to fully settle into its new host. 2 days after we escaped the nursing home, my son Terrence threw a party. He called it a farewell to the estate gala. It was being held at my house on Oak Street. The house he thought he owned. The house he thought he had successfully stolen. I sat in the back of a tinted SUV across the street watching the guests arrive. It was 8 in the evening. The street was lined with luxury cars, Mercedes, BMW, even a Bentley. These were not our neighbors. These were not the people I had barbecued with for 30 years. These were sharks. They were investors, real estate flippers, and the high society friends Paige was desperate to impress. They were walking into my home, drinking my liquor, and celebrating my demise. Beside me, Beatrice smoothed the skirt of her dress. It was a deep emerald silk. She looked regal. She looked like a queen who had returned to reclaim her throne. There was no trace of the frightened woman who had shivered in the cold motel room. Her hair was done. Her makeup was flawless. She wore the diamond necklace I had bought her for our 40th anniversary, the one piece of jewelry Paige had not managed to find and pawn because Beatrice kept it in a safety deposit box Terrence didn't know about. "Are you ready?" Beatrice asked. Her voice was calm. I adjusted my tie. I was wearing my best charcoal suit. It was tailored. It was sharp. I did not look like a dementia patient. I did not look like an indigent ward inmate. I looked like what I was. A man who built bridges that could withstand hurricanes. "I am ready," I said. I looked at the driver. It was Otis. He was wearing a chauffeur cap, but his eyes in the rearview mirror were the eyes of a soldier on the front line. "Reynolds is inside," Otis said. "He is in the kitchen with the tech team. The projector is wired. The sound system is hacked. We have control of the environment." "Good," I said. "Wait for the signal," Otis said. "Let him dig the hole a little deeper." I watched through the window. The front door of my house was open. I could see into the foyer. Paige was standing there greeting guests. She was wearing a dress that glittered like broken glass. She was laughing. She was touching the arms of men she didn't know. She was playing the part of the gracious heiress. She had no idea that the FBI was currently building a file on her husband that was thicker than a phone book. She had no idea that forensic accountants were currently freezing the assets she thought she had secured. Inside the house, the party was reaching a crescendo. I monitored the audio feed through an earpiece. Otis had planted bugs in the living room fixtures before the party started. I heard the clinking of glasses. I heard the murmur of conversation. They were talking about property values. They were talking about zoning laws. They were talking about how clever Terrence was to unload a dated property in this market. Then the music stopped. A microphone fed back with a sharp whine. "Ladies and gentlemen," Terrence's voice boomed over the speakers. I watched on a tablet as he stepped onto a small stage they had erected in my living room. He was holding a glass of champagne. He looked flushed. He looked drunk on power. "Thank you all for coming," Terrence said. "Tonight is a bittersweet night. We are saying goodbye to this house. It has been in the family for decades, but as many of you know, my parents' health has declined rapidly." He paused for effect. He looked down at his shoes as if he were holding back tears. "It was a hard decision," he continued, "the hardest of my life. But we had to do what was best for them. Dad has confused days and bad days, mostly bad days now. He became violent. He became a danger to Mom. We had to move them to a specialized facility, a place where they can get the constant care they need." A murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. "Poor Terrence. Such a good son. Selling this house is the only way to pay for their medical bills." Terrence lied. His voice cracked with fake emotion. "Every dime of this sale goes to their care. It is my burden to bear. But I do it with love." I clenched my jaw. Every dime. He had already spent $50,000 on a car and a watch. He had already transferred the rest to an offshore account Reynolds had tracked. To celebrate their legacy, Terrence said, gesturing to a massive projection screen behind him, "I have put together a small tribute, a look back at the happy times before the darkness took them." The lights in the living room dimmed. The projector hummed to life. A photo appeared on the screen. It was Terrence at his college graduation standing between me and Beatrice. We looked proud. He looked young. The crowd said, "Aw." Another photo. Terrence and Paige at their wedding. Then the screen flickered. It went black for a second. Static cut through the speakers, a harsh grinding noise that made the guests cover their ears. Terrence tapped the microphone. "Apologies, folks. Technical difficulties. Just a moment." He waved at a technician in the corner. The technician, who was actually one of Otis's men, shrugged. The screen flickered again. The image stabilized. It was not a photo. It was a video. It was grainy. It was shot from a low angle looking up. It was black and white night vision. The room went silent. The guests squinted, trying to understand what they were seeing. It was the interior of a cage. There were metal bars. There were peeling concrete walls. There were 2 thin cots. And there was Paige. She was standing over a sleeping old woman. She was twisting her hair around her finger. Her face was twisted into a sneer that looked demonic in the infrared light. The audio kicked in. It was crystal clear. Otis had scrubbed the background noise. "If you do not pick up that pen right now, I am going to have a talk with the orderly." The voice boomed through the living room. It was Paige's voice, but stripped of its social sweetness. It was pure venom. The guests gasped. Paige, who was standing near the front of the room, froze. She dropped her champagne flute. It didn't break on the carpet, but the wine spilled like blood. On the screen, the video Paige leaned closer. I will tell him that Beatrice fell. I will tell him she was trying to escape, and she slipped in the shower. Old women have such brittle bones, Cyrus. A woman in the front row covered her mouth with her hand. A man near the bar put his drink down. A hip fracture at her age is basically a death sentence. Infection sets in. Pneumonia follows. It is a slow, painful way to go. Terrence was staring at the screen. His mouth was open. He looked like he had been struck by lightning. He waved his hands frantically. "Turn it off!" he screamed. "Turn it off! It is a deep fake. It is AI. Turn it off!" But the video didn't stop. It cut to a new angle. This one showed Terrence. He was sitting knee to knee with an old man in a hospital gown. Me. Sign the papers, Dad. Just sign them, and this is all over. The video. Cyrus looked frail. He looked broken. "What about Beatrice?" the video Cyrus asked. "What about the hip fracture?" Then came the laughter. Paige's laughter. Bright and tinkling and cruel. "Don't worry, Cyrus. As long as you stay quiet, she stays safe. Just enjoy your retirement. You have a roof over your head. What more do you want?" The video cut to black. Then it cut to one final clip. This was from the phone call Terrence had made to me while he was at the steakhouse. The audio played over a still image of Terrence driving his new Porsche. Executive decision. I told them to downgrade you to the basic plan. Cut the meal service to twice a day. No physical therapy. No extra meds. Economics, Dad. You just sit there. You are not burning calories. The silence in the room was absolute. It was heavy. It was suffocating. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. 100 people turned to look at Terrence. They looked at Paige. The admiration in their eyes was gone, replaced by horror, replaced by disgust. Terrence was shaking. He looked around the room wild-eyed. "That is not real," he stammered. "That is edited. They are trying to frame me. My father, he is sick. He is paranoid. He made this up." Otis tapped on the partition window. "Go time," he said. I opened the car door. Beatrice opened hers. We stepped out onto the pavement. The night air was cool. We walked up the driveway. I did not need a cane. I did not need support. I walked with the stride of a man who owned the ground beneath his feet. The front door was open. We walked into the foyer. The guests parted like the Red Sea. They backed away from us, giving us a wide berth. They looked at us with shock. They expected ghosts. They expected invalids. Instead, they got Cyrus and Beatrice King. We walked into the living room. The lights were still dim, but the spotlight from the stage hit us. Terrence saw us first. He went pale. He looked as if he were seeing his own death walking toward him. Paige let out a small strangled sound. She backed up until she hit the wall. I stopped in the center of the room. I looked around at the guests. I looked at the furniture that wasn't mine. I looked at the garbage bags in the corner where my life had been discarded. Then I looked at my son. "Hello, Terrence," I said. My voice was calm. It filled the room without a microphone. Terrence dropped his glass. It hit the floor and shattered. Shards of crystal flew across the hardwood. "Dad," he whispered. He looked at my suit. He looked at Beatrice's diamonds. He looked at the fact that we were standing there, healthy and strong. "You," he stammered, "you are supposed to be. You are at Sunset Creek." I took a step forward. The glass crunched under my dress shoes. "I checked out early," I said. "The service was terrible, and the food was lacking." Terrence backed up until he bumped into the projection screen. His image, his graduation photo, was projected onto his back. "How did you get here?" he asked. His voice was rising in panic. "How did you escape? Did you hurt someone? You are fugitives." He looked at the crowd. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "Call the police," he shouted. "Someone, call the police. He is dangerous. He escaped a secure facility. He is violent. He attacked a nurse." No one moved. No one pulled out a phone. They just watched. "You don't need to call them." "Terrence," I said. I pointed to the front door. Blue lights flashed through the windows. Sirens wailed, cutting through the tension in the room. "They are already here," I said. Terrence looked at the window. He looked at me. His face twisted into a mask of rage and confusion. "You truant!" he screamed. "You senile old fool, you ruined everything. You ruined my party." He lunged toward me. It was a desperate, foolish move. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to silence the evidence standing in his living room. But he never reached me. Beatrice stepped forward. She didn't flinch. She looked him dead in the eye. "Sit down, Terrence," she said. It was the voice of a mother. It was the voice that had potty-trained him. The voice that had scolded him for not doing his homework. The voice that had sung him to sleep. It stopped him cold. He froze. He looked at her. "Mom," he whimpered. Beatrice shook her head. "Don't call me that," she said. "You lost the right to call me that when you threatened to break my bones." The front door burst open. "Police, everybody stay where you are." A dozen officers swarmed into the room. These were not the local patrolmen who had stopped my truck. These were state police, Economic Crimes Division, and behind them men in windbreakers with 3 letters on the back, FBI. Reynolds walked in behind them. He looked calm. He looked bored. He walked over to me and handed me a folder. The wire transfer was intercepted. Cyrus Reynolds said loud enough for Terrence to hear. "The funds from the house sale. We froze them in the Cayman account before they could settle." Terrence's knees gave out. He slid down the projection screen, leaving a streak of sweat on the white fabric. What he whispered. "You didn't sell the house, Terrence," I said. I stood over him. I looked down at the son I had raised. "You sold a lie. And you bought a prison sentence." "Officers," Terrence screamed, pointing at me. "Arrest him. He is the criminal. He stole the truck. He is crazy." An FBI agent stepped forward. He walked right past me. He walked up to Terrence. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Terrence King," the agent said, "you are under arrest for elder abuse, wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder." "Murder," Terrence shrieked. "I didn't kill anyone." "Attempted murder," the agent corrected. "Depriving a dependent adult of food and medication with the intent to cause death. We have the phone call, Mr. King. We have the order to cut their rations. That is intent." He grabbed Terrence's wrists. He spun him around. He clicked the cuffs tight. Paige tried to run. She saw the ship sinking and she tried to jump. She bolted toward the kitchen door, toward the back exit. She didn't make it 5 steps. Otis stepped out from the kitchen hallway. He blocked her path. He crossed his arms. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her. She stopped. She turned back. An officer was waiting for her. "Paige King," the officer said. "You are under arrest." "No." Paige screamed. She sounded like a cornered animal. It was him. It was all him. He made me do it. He threatened me. "I am a victim." I laughed. It was a dry, harsh sound. "You are the architect, Paige," I said. "You drew the blueprints." He just swung the hammer. They dragged them out. They dragged them past the silent guests. They dragged them past the expensive buffet they hadn't paid for. They dragged them past me and Beatrice. Terrence looked at me one last time as they shoved him toward the door. "Why, Dad," he sobbed. "Why did you do this to me?" I looked at him. I felt a pang of grief, deep and sharp. But I smothered it with the truth. "I didn't do this to you, son," I said. "You did it to yourself. I just turned on the lights." The door slammed shut. The sirens wailed. The room was quiet. I looked at the crowd. I looked at the investors and the social climbers. "The party is over," I said. "Get out of my house." They scrambled. They grabbed their purses and their coats. They didn't make eye contact. They fled like roaches when the kitchen light snaps on. Within minutes, the house was empty. Just me, Beatrice, Otis, and Reynolds, and the wreckage of a family that had finally collapsed under the weight of its own greed. The room was filled with the flashing blue lights of the police cruisers parked on the lawn outside. The shadows danced across the walls of the living room I had built with my own hands. My son Terrence stood in the center of the chaos. He was cornered. He was shaking. But he was not done fighting. He still believed he had the ultimate weapon. He still believed in the power of the paper in his hand. "You cannot arrest me!" Terrence screamed. His voice cracked with hysteria. He waved the document in the face of the FBI agent. "Look at this. Read it. I have power of attorney. I have the deed transfer. This is my house. I sold it legally." He turned to me. His eyes were wild. "Tell them, Dad. Tell them you signed it. You signed it in front of a notary. It is legal. You cannot take it back just because you escaped the facility." I stood next to Beatrice. I felt her hand on my arm. She was not trembling anymore. She was watching the son she had birthed self-destruct. I said nothing. I did not need to speak. I had hired a voice for this moment. Mr. Reynolds stepped out from the shadows of the hallway. He walked into the circle of light. He looked impeccable in his suit. He looked like a man who dissected problems for a living. He held a manila folder in his hand. Mr. King Reynolds said calmly. His voice cut through Terrence's screaming like a scalpel. You are holding a document that you believe grants you total control over your father's assets. You believe it transfers the title of this property to your name. Is that correct? Yes, Terrence spat. He thrust the paper toward Reynolds. It is notarized. It is signed. Cyrus King. Right there. Reynolds took the paper. He looked at it. He didn't read it. He just looked at the signature at the bottom. The shaky, jagged signature I had scrawled in the nursing home cell. Cyrus J. King Reynolds read aloud. Exactly, Terrence yelled. That is him. That is his name. Reynolds looked up. He looked at the FBI agents. He looked at the state police. Then he looked at Terrence with a gaze that was almost pitying. There is just one problem, Mr. King Reynolds said. He opened his own folder. He pulled out a yellow document. It was old. The edges were frayed. It was a court order dated 20 years ago. This is a legal name change decree, Reynolds said. He held it up for the room to see. 20 years ago, your father legally changed his name. He dropped his birth name to honor the stepfather who raised him when his biological father walked out. I watched Terrence's face. The confusion was starting to set in. Reynolds continued. The legal owner of this property is not Cyrus Jeremiah King. The deed to this house is held by Cyrus Freeman. All bank accounts are in the name of Cyrus Freeman. The trust is in the name of Cyrus Freeman. Reynolds dropped the name change decree onto the coffee table. It landed with a soft slap. Terrence stared at it. He blinked. What he whispered. Your father never updated his driver's license, Reynolds said. He never updated his social contacts. To the world, he was still Cyrus King. But to the law, he is Cyrus Freeman. Reynolds held up the paper Terrence had forced me to sign. This document grants power of attorney over a Cyrus King, Reynolds said. But Cyrus King owns nothing. He has no assets. He has no property. He is a ghost. You forced a man to sign a name that has no legal standing over the assets you tried to steal. The room went silent. The only sound was the static from the police radios. I stepped forward. I looked at my son. I told you, Terrence, I said. I told you I am a structural engineer. Details matter. Foundations matter. You tried to build a castle on a name that doesn't exist. Terrence looked at the paper in his hand. It was trembling violently now. It was worthless. It was scrap. But you signed it, he stammered. You intended to give it to me. I intended to survive, I said. I signed what you put in front of me to stop your wife from hurting your mother, but I knew it was a blank check drawn on an empty account. Reynolds wasn't finished. He took a step closer to Terrence. He was closing the trap. But the invalidity of the document is a civil matter, Reynolds said. That just means you don't own the house. That just means you are trespassing. He paused. He looked at the FBI agent. The criminal matter arises from what you did yesterday, Reynolds said. You accepted a cash deposit of $50,000 from a Mr. Sterling. Terrence looked up. His eyes darted around the room. Where is Sterling? Mr. Sterling is a forensic accountant who works for my firm, Reynolds said. He was acting as an agent for a shell company owned by your father. Terrence's mouth fell open. He looked at me. The realization hit him like a physical blow. You bought your own house, he whispered. I did not buy it, I said. I just paid a premium to catch a thief. Reynolds nodded. The $50,000 was marked bills. It was trust money. Even if you believed you had the right to sell the house, the law requires that deposit to be placed in an escrow account until closing. It is a fiduciary duty. Reynolds pulled out a tablet. He tapped the screen. He showed it to the FBI agent. But you didn't put it in escrow, Reynolds said. Within 2 hours of receiving the cash, you spent $20,000 at a luxury car dealership. You spent $10,000 on a watch. And you wired $20,000 to an account in Miami linked to known illegal gambling operations. The FBI agent stepped forward. He placed a hand on his holster. That is embezzlement, Mr. King Reynolds said. That is wire fraud. That is money laundering. And because you used the interstate banking system to pay off a gambling debt, it is a federal crime. Terrence dropped the papers. They fluttered to the floor, landing on the broken glass of the champagne flute. No, he moaned. No, this is a mistake. I didn't know. Ignorance of the law is not a defense, the FBI agent said. His voice was deep and bored. He had seen men like Terrence before, men who thought they were smarter than the system. Terrence looked at Paige. She was pressed against the wall, her face pale as a sheet. She was shaking her head slowly, her eyes wide with terror. "Babe," Terrence said, Tell them we needed the money. Tell them about the guys in Miami." Paige didn't speak. She looked at him with pure hatred. She saw him drowning and she was not going to throw him a line. The FBI agent pulled the handcuffs from his belt. The metallic ratchet sound was loud in the quiet room. "Terrence King, turn around. Put your hands behind your back." Terrence didn't move. He stood there frozen. He looked at me. "Dad, please." I looked at him. I saw the boy I had carried on my shoulders. I saw the teenager I had taught to drive. I saw the man who had stood at the altar and promised to be good. But then I saw the man who had put me in a cage. I saw the man who had ordered my food rations cut. I saw the man who had looked at his mother and threatened to let her die alone. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. And in my eyes, he saw the bridge collapsing. He saw the supports giving way. The agent grabbed Terrence's shoulder. He spun him around. He wrenched his arms back. Click, click. The cuffs locked. Terrence let out a sob. It was a pathetic sound. A sound of total defeat. "I have rights," he cried. "I want a lawyer." "You are going to need a very good one," Reynolds said. "And since your assets are frozen, I suggest you start looking for a public defender." They began to march him out. The guests who were still lingering in the foyer watched in silence. They watched the host of the party being dragged away in chains. Terrence struggled. He twisted his head back to look at Paige. "Paige, help me," he screamed. "Call your dad. Call someone." Paige didn't move. She stared at him. She looked like a statue of ice. He looked at me one last time before they pushed him through the door. "I am your son," he yelled. "How can you do this to your son?" I turned away. I looked at Beatrice. She was crying silently. I put my arm around her. "You stopped being my son when you sold me for parts," I whispered to the empty air. The front door slammed shut. The sirens outside wailed as the cruiser took him away. The room felt lighter. The air felt cleaner. The parasite had been removed, but the infection remained. I turned my attention to the corner of the room. Paige was still standing there, pressed against the wall. She was trying to make herself small. She was trying to disappear. She looked at the empty doorway where her husband had just vanished. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were wet. Her lip trembled. She clasped her hands together in a pleading gesture. "Cyrus," she whispered. Her voice was trembling. She took a step forward. She looked at Beatrice. "Mom," she said. Beatrice stiffened. Paige took another step. She was beginning to hyperventilate. She was starting the performance of her life. "He made me do it," she sobbed. "Terrence. He is a monster. He threatened me. He said he would hurt me if I didn't go along with it." She fell to her knees. She grabbed the hem of Beatrice's dress. I was scared she cried. "I wanted to tell you. I wanted to warn you. But I was so scared. Please, you have to believe me. I am a victim here too." I looked at Reynolds. He was watching her with a cold, analytical expression. He tapped the folder in his hand. I looked at Otis. He was standing by the kitchen door blocking the exit. He shook his head slowly. I looked down at the woman kneeling on my floor, the woman who had twisted my wife's hair, the woman who had laughed about my hip fracture. She was good. She was very good. If I hadn't heard the recordings, if I hadn't seen the video, she might have convinced a jury. She might have convinced a judge. But she couldn't convince me. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out my phone. I opened the audio file I had recorded on the morning I escaped, the morning she thought I was asleep. I pressed play. I turned the volume up all the way. Ba jia da chet kang sum kang tot. The voice on the recording was unmistakable. It was Paige. It was cold. It was calculating. "We need the money now. If she doesn't die in the home, we might have to help things along. An overdose, a pillow, something quiet." Paige's sobbing stopped instantly. Her face went slack. The color drained out of her skin, leaving her looking like a wax doll. She looked up at me. The pleading was gone, replaced by pure terror. I tapped the screen. The recording stopped. "You were saying something about being a victim, Paige," I asked. She scrambled backward, crab walking away from me. She hit the wall again. "That is not me," she whispered. "That is AI. You faked it." Reynolds stepped forward. "We also have the text messages," Mrs. King Reynolds said. "The ones you sent to the loan shark in Miami. The ones where you offered your in-laws life insurance policies as collateral." He dropped a stack of printed screenshots onto the floor in front of her. "And we have the testimony of the document forger," Reynolds added. "Paul Hayes. He cut a deal. He told the FBI everything. He told them you were the one who designed the fake medical history. You were the one who provided the details." Paige looked at the papers. She looked at Reynolds. She looked at the FBI agent who had stayed behind. The agent walked toward her. He pulled out a second pair of handcuffs. "Paige King," he said. "Stand up." She didn't stand up. She couldn't. Her legs wouldn't work. The agent reached down and pulled her up. She was limp. She was dead weight. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, and federal wire fraud." She started to scream then. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of rage. "It is not fair," she shrieked. "We were so close. We deserved it. You old people, you hoard everything. You have the house. You have the money. We have nothing." She spat at me. It landed on my shoe. "You should have just died," she screamed. "Why didn't you just die?" The agent spun her around. He cuffed her. He dragged her toward the door. She fought him. She kicked. She bit. She was a wild animal caught in a trap. I watched her go. I watched the woman who had poisoned my family be dragged out of my house. When the door closed behind her, the silence was absolute. It was over. I looked at Beatrice. She was trembling. I put my arms around her. "They are gone," I said. "They can't hurt us anymore." She buried her face in my chest. She wept. She wept for the son we had lost. She wept for the daughter we never had. I looked around the room. It was a mess. There was broken glass. There were papers scattered everywhere. The projection screen was still down, showing the frozen image of Terrence's face. I walked over to the projector. I pulled the plug. The image vanished. I looked at Reynolds. "Thank you," I said. He nodded. He closed his briefcase. "The assets are secure, Cyrus," he said. "The house is yours again. The money is safe. I will handle the press. I will handle the DA. You two just rest." I looked at Otis. He was smiling. A grim, tired smile. "We burned it down, Cyrus," Otis said. "Just like you said. We burned it down." I agreed. Reynolds and Otis left. The police left. The lights of the cruisers faded into the night. I was alone in my house with my wife. But it didn't feel like my house anymore. The walls felt thin. The air felt tainted. Beatrice looked at me. Her eyes were red. "What do we do now?" she asked. I looked at the space where the family photos used to hang. I looked at the empty shelves where our memories used to be. "We can't stay here," I said. "Where do we go?" she asked. I thought about the RV brochure I had hidden in my desk drawer for 10 years. The trip we never took because Terrence needed tuition. The trip we postponed because Terrence needed a car. The trip we forgot because we were too busy building a foundation for a son who wanted to tear it down. I took her hand. "Pack a bag." "Beatrice," I said. "Just a bag," she asked. "Just a bag. We are not coming back." She looked at me. She understood. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Paris," I said. She blinked. "Paris, France. Paris, Texas. Paris, Tennessee. Paris, France. Wherever the road goes." I pulled out my wallet. I pulled out the 2 first-class tickets I had bought with my secret account the day I met with Reynolds. I had kept them as a promise that there was life after the wreckage. "We are going to see the world, B," I said. "We are going to spend every dime. We are going to eat the food. We are going to drink the wine. And we are going to leave nothing behind but dust." She smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "Okay," she said. We walked out of the house. We didn't lock the door. We didn't look back. We got into the truck. It started on the first try. I put it in gear. I drove down the street past the neighbors who were peeking out of their windows. I was 70 years old. I had no son. I had no house. But the road ahead was wide open. And for the first time in 40 years, I was the one driving. The party was over. But the life was just beginning. The sound of the handcuffs, ratcheting tight around my son's wrists, was the loudest thing in the room. It was a mechanical sound, final, absolute. Terrence stood there, with his head bowed, the fight completely drained out of him. He looked like a building that had been imploded from the inside, a structural failure caused by the weight of his own lies. The FBI agent held him firmly by the elbow, ready to march him out of the house he had tried to steal. But the silence did not last. It was broken by a shriek that tore through the tension like a circular saw hitting a nail. "Officer, wait!" It was Paige. I turned to look at her. She was pressed against the wall near the fireplace, her expensive designer dress trembling along with her body. Her eyes were wide, darting between Terrence in cuffs and the agents who were now turning their attention to her. She looked at her husband. I saw the calculation happen in real time. I saw the moment she decided that her survival was worth more than her marriage. I saw the moment she decided to cut the rope and let him fall alone. "I am a victim here," Paige screamed. She threw her hands up in a gesture of surrender, tears instantly springing to her eyes. It was a marvelous performance. She pointed a shaking finger at Terrence. "He made me do it. He forced me." Terrence lifted his head. He looked at his wife. His expression was one of dull confusion, like a boxer who had taken too many hits to the head. "Paige," he whispered. "Don't you speak to me!" she yelled, her voice pitching up into hysteria. She looked at the FBI agent. "You have to believe me. I didn't want to be part of this. I begged him to stop. I told him we shouldn't hurt his parents, but he threatened me." She sobbed, a ragged, gasping sound. She hugged herself, trying to look small and fragile. "He hits me," she lied. She looked at the crowd of guests, seeking sympathy. "He has a temper. He said if I didn't help him get the money, he would kill me. He said he would put me in the ground next to the old people." I was terrified. I was just doing what I had to do to stay alive. A murmur went through the room. I saw doubt creeping into the faces of the guests. I saw the FBI agent pause. The narrative of the abused wife is powerful. It invokes a protective instinct. Paige knew this. She was weaponizing her femininity just as she had weaponized my age. Terrence stared at her. The betrayal was absolute. "Babe," he said, his voice cracking. "We planned this together. You found the nursing home. You found the forger." "He is lying," Paige shrieked. "Look at him. He is a monster. I am just a girl who got caught in his web. Please, officer, I can testify against him. I can tell you everything. Just don't arrest me. I am innocent." The room held its breath. For a moment it seemed like she might pull it off. She was beautiful. She was crying. She was convincing. I stepped forward. My boots echoed on the hardwood floor. I walked past my son. I walked past the agents. I stopped 3 feet from Paige. She looked at me. Her eyes were wet, pleading. "Cyrus, please," she whimpered. "You know how he is. You know he has a dark side. Help me." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had lived in my house, eaten my food, and smiled in my face while holding a dagger behind her back. I reached into the pocket of my suit jacket. I pulled out my phone. "You are right, Paige," I said. My voice was low, but it carried to every corner of the silent room. "There is a monster in this room." I tapped the screen. I opened the audio file. It was the recording from the morning I had escaped, the morning I had pretended to be asleep while she packed her bag in the hallway outside my bedroom door. The morning she thought no one was listening. I held the phone up. I pressed play. The audio was crisp. There was no static. "We need the money now, Terrence." It was Paige's voice. There was no fear in it. There was no hesitation. It was cold. It was impatient. "The interest is compounding in Miami. If that old woman doesn't die in the home within a month, we might have to help things along." Paige's face went slack. The tears stopped instantly. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The recording continued. "An overdose is easy. Or a pillow. Something quiet. She is old. Nobody will ask questions. I just want her dead, Terrence. That old bitch needs to die as soon as possible so we can get our lives started." I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was heavier than concrete. The guests looked at Paige with horror. The sympathy was gone, replaced by a collective revulsion. She hadn't just been complicit. She had been the instigator. She had actively planned to murder my wife. I lowered the phone. "He hit you?" I asked. "He forced you." Paige took a step back. She hit the wall. There was nowhere left to go. That is out of context," she stammered. "I was venting. I was stressed. You were plotting a homicide," I said. The FBI agent stepped forward. He had heard enough. He reached for his second pair of cuffs. "Ms. King," he said. "No," she yelled. She looked around the room, her eyes wild. She was looking for an exit. She was looking for a weapon. She was looking for another lie. Otis stepped out from the kitchen doorway. He caught the eye of the lead agent. He tapped his nose and pointed to the designer handbag Paige had dropped on the floor when the police first burst in. "It was a Birkin bag. It cost more than my first house." "Check the bag," Otis said. His voice was gravel. Paige lunged for the bag. She moved fast, like a striking cobra. "Don't touch that," she screamed. "That is private property. You need a warrant." The agent blocked her. He pushed her back effortlessly. Another officer picked up the bag. He dumped the contents onto the coffee table. Makeup spilled out, keys, a wallet, and 3 clear plastic baggies filled with white powder, and a small black ledger. The officer picked up one of the baggies. He held it up to the light. "Cocaine," the officer said. "A trafficking amount." He picked up the ledger. He flipped it open. "And here we have the debt," the officer said. He read from the page. Names, dates, amounts, and a contact listed as the Cuban. "You owe $200,000, Ms. King. And it looks like you were planning to pay it back by selling stolen property." Paige let out a sound that wasn't human. It was a guttural growl of frustration. The mask was completely gone now. The victim was gone. The loving daughter-in-law was gone. All that was left was a cornered rat. "It is not mine," she screamed. "He planted it. The old man planted it. He is setting me up." Reynolds stepped forward. He adjusted his glasses. "We have the surveillance footage from the nursing home parking lot," Reynolds said calmly. "We have video of you buying those drugs from a contact in a sedan 3 days ago. We have audio of you telling Terrence it was for courage. It was a lie, of course. We didn't have that specific video. But Paige didn't know that. She didn't know what we had. She only knew that we seemed to know everything. She collapsed. She didn't faint. She just gave up. Her legs stopped working. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor surrounded by the wreckage of her schemes. The FBI agent hauled her up. She was dead weight. He spun her around. "Paige King, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute, and federal wire fraud." He clicked the cuffs on. She didn't scream this time. She just started to laugh. It was a high, broken giggle. "You think you won?" she whispered, looking at me. "You are just a dusty old man. You are nothing. We were the future. We deserved it." I looked at her. I looked at the drugs on the table. I looked at my son, who was watching his wife with eyes deadened by shock. "You were not the future, Paige," I said. "You were a demolition order, but you forgot one thing." "What?" she hissed. "You have to check the foundation before you swing the ball," I said. "And this foundation is made of iron." "Take them away," the agent ordered. The police began to move. They grabbed Terrence. They grabbed Paige. They marched them toward the front door. The guests parted again. They shrank away from the couple as if they were contagious. No one offered a hand. No one offered a lawyer. They held up their phones, recording the walk of shame. I watched them go. I watched my son being dragged out of the house he grew up in. I watched him stumble on the front step. I watched him look back at me one last time. "Dad," he wailed. It was a child's cry. I didn't answer. I turned my back on him. I turned to Beatrice. She was standing by the window watching the flashing lights. She was not crying anymore. She looked tired. She looked older than she had yesterday. "They are gone," she said softly. "They are gone," I said. The front door slammed shut. The sirens wailed, fading into the distance as the cruisers pulled away, taking the poison out of our lives. The room was quiet. The party was over. The guests began to shuffle toward the door, muttering apologies, avoiding my gaze. They were embarrassed. They were ashamed to have been part of the celebration. I let them go. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't care about them. I looked at Reynolds. He was gathering the documents from the table. He put the fake deed in his briefcase. "We will need statements," Reynolds said. "Tomorrow. Tonight the police have enough to hold them without bail." "Thank you," I said. Reynolds nodded. He looked at the house. "It is a nice house, Cyrus," he said. "It was," I said. "Now it is just a crime scene." Reynolds left. Otis lingered by the door. "You good?" Otis asked. "I am standing," I said. "That is enough," Otis said. He tipped his cap to Beatrice. "Good night, ma'am." "Good night, Otis," she said. "Thank you." He left. We were alone. The house was big and empty and silent. The air conditioning hummed. The smell of expensive perfume and fear still lingered in the air. I looked at Beatrice. "We did it," I said. She nodded. "We did. But what do we do now?" I looked around the living room. I looked at the empty walls where the pictures used to be. I looked at the spot on the rug where my son had been arrested. "This place is dead," I said. "We can't live here," she agreed. "Not after this." I walked over to her. I took her hand. "Do you trust me?" I asked. "Always," she said. "Then let's finish it," I said. "Let's finish the purge." I took out my phone. I dialed the number of the contractor I had worked with for 20 years. A man who owed me a favor. A man who had heavy machinery. It rang 3 times. "Hello?" A sleepy voice answered. "Jim, it is Cyrus," I said. "Cyrus. It is midnight. Is everything okay?" "I have a job for you, Jim," I said. "What kind of job?" "Demolition." I said. "What are we tearing down?" "My house," I said. There was a silence on the line. "Your house? The one on Oak Street?" "Yes," I said. "When do you want to start?" "First thing in the morning," I said. "I want it gone, Jim. I want the foundation dug up. I want the earth salted. I want it flat." "Cyrus, are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything I said." "All right," Jim said. "I will have the crew there at 7. I hung up. Beatrice looked at me. She didn't look shocked. She looked relieved. "Flatten it," she whispered. "Flatten it," I said. We walked to the door. We stepped out onto the porch. The night was cool. The stars were out. The blue lights were gone. We walked to the truck. It was waiting for us. It was beat up. It was old, but it was ours. I opened the door for her. She climbed in. "Where are we going tonight?" she asked. "To a hotel," I said. "A nice one, with room service and soft sheets. And tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," I said, starting the engine, "we start building something new, something they can't touch." I put the truck in gear. We drove away from the house. We drove away from the memories. We drove away from the past. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. There was nothing back there worth seeing. The morning sun hit the floorboards where the rug used to be. It illuminated the dust that had settled after the police boots had marched my son out the door. The house was silent. It was a big, hollow silence. I stood in the center of the living room holding a cup of coffee that tasted like victory and ash. Beatrice walked in. She was wearing her traveling clothes. She looked at the walls. She looked at the fireplace. She didn't see the memories anymore. She saw the stain. "Do you want to keep it?" I asked. The question hung in the air. This house was my life's work. I had poured the concrete. I had framed the roof. Beatrice shook her head slowly. Her eyes were dry. "No," she said. Her voice was firm. "It is not ours anymore, Cyrus. It belongs to the ghosts. It has been stained by greed. If we stay here, we will always hear the sound of the handcuffs clicking. We will always see Paige kneeling on the floor lying to us. I cannot live in a museum of betrayal." I nodded. She was right. A house is just wood and stone. A home is the people inside it. And the people who had tried to take this house had poisoned the air. I pulled out my phone. I called Reynolds. He was expecting the call. He arrived an hour later, not with a suit but with a casual jacket. He carried a single folder. "Are you sure about this?" Cyrus Reynolds asked. "The market value is substantial. You could sell it. You could rent it." "I don't want the money," I said. "Terrence wanted the money. Paige wanted the money. If I sell it for profit, I become like them. I want to wash it clean." I took the pen. The document was titled Deed of Gift. The recipient was the Atlanta Veterans Association. The purpose was specific: transitional housing for homeless veterans, men and women who had served their country and had nowhere to go. Men like Otis, men like me. "They tried to put me in a warehouse for the forgotten," I said as I signed my name. My real name, Cyrus Freeman. "So I am going to turn this house into a sanctuary for the remembered. Let Terrence rot in a cell knowing that his inheritance is going to feed and shelter the men he looked down on." Reynolds took the papers. He smiled. It was a genuine smile. "This is a good thing, Cyrus. It is a righteous thing." He left. The house was no longer mine. It belonged to the soldiers now. It belonged to the future. I turned to Beatrice. She was standing by the door holding her small suitcase. She looked tired, but she looked free. "What now?" she asked. "We have the truck. We have the road. Do we just drive?" I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I felt the envelope there. I had carried it for weeks, waiting for the dust to settle, waiting for the foundation to be secure enough to build the next level. "We drive eventually," I said, "but not today. Today we fly." I handed her the envelope. She took it. She opened it with trembling fingers. She pulled out the boarding passes. She gasped. She covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes filled with tears. "Paris," she whispered. "Charles de Gaulle. First class." "You waited 40 years, Beatrice," I said. "You saved coupons. You sacrificed vacations. You put every extra dollar into Terrence's college fund. You never complained. You never asked. But I knew. I always knew." I took a step closer to her. I took her hands in mine. They were the hands that had built this family. They were the hands that had saved me on the highway. "We are going to walk along the Seine," I said. "We are going to eat bread that is still warm. We are going to drink wine that costs too much. And we are not going to think about lawyers or courts or sons who lost their way. We are going to be Cyrus and Beatrice. Just us." She hugged me. She buried her face in my shoulder. "I thought we lost everything," she said into my coat. "We lost the dead weight," I said. "We kept the gold. We walked out of the house. We didn't lock the door." The veterans would be here soon to change the locks anyway, to change the energy, to fill the rooms with stories of survival instead of stories of deceit. We walked to the truck, my old Ford. It was rusted. It had a dent in the bumper. The engine rattled, but it was loyal. It had carried us away from the danger, and now it would carry us to the airport. I opened the passenger door for Beatrice. She climbed in. She looked back at the house one last time. She didn't wave, she just nodded. A silent goodbye to the life we had lived and the sun we had buried not in the ground but in our hearts. I climbed into the driver's seat. I put the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. It was a rough sound, a tough sound. It sounded like resilience. I put it in gear. I pulled away from the curb. I looked in the rearview mirror. The house shrank. The lawn where Terrence had given his fake speech disappeared. The driveway where Paige had been arrested vanished. The sun was setting in front of us, a giant orange ball of fire sinking into the Atlanta skyline. It painted the clouds purple and gold. It was beautiful. It was the end of the day, but for us it was the beginning of the rest of our lives. I reached over and took Beatrice's hand. "Ready?" I asked. She squeezed my fingers. "Ready," she said. We drove into the light. We had no sun. We had no house. But we had our dignity. We had our freedom. And we had Paris waiting for us on the other side of the ocean. The nightmare was over. The structural failure had been contained, the debris had been cleared, and the view from the top of the bridge was spectacular. I drove on, and I didn't look back. Not even once. My son taught me the hardest lesson of a father's life, that shared blood does not guarantee shared values. We spent 40 years building a legacy for a child who only saw us as an ATM. But in the ashes of that betrayal, Beatrice and I found something stronger. We found that dignity cannot be foreclosed on, and freedom is worth more than any property deed. True family isn't defined by DNA, but by loyalty. Sometimes you have to let the rot go to save the foundation. We lost a son, but we reclaimed our lives. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments. Would you have forgiven Terrence, or would you have pressed charges like I did?